I am Madison, but everyone calls me Maddie. You can call me Maddie too. I wanted to share a piece of my life with you. At 16-year-old, life can be so dull and exciting at the same time. The most exciting part of my life is that I live in London. I love everything about London. Everyone thinks that people from London drink only tea, but that's not true. I love coffee. I have always loved coffee. My mom thinks that coffee might be the reason why I can't fall asleep at night. But I can't help it. The coffee wakes my soul up. There is so much to see and do in London. You can never get bored of it. I don't know if you know, but London has the most extensive library in the whole world. I love reading. Maybe that's why I drink so much coffee. It helps me not fall asleep and read more and more. I am obsessed with reading. My favorite book of all time is The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. Once, I have read a whole book in just 2 days. But, what can I do? I don't enjoy going on my social media anymore. Everything is so fake, and I am tired of it. Why would I enjoy watching someone posting their food? Okay, you ate a margarita pizza, now what? And, no, Jessica, you don't look like that in real life. We can see your Photoshop fails. I think I am an old soul, just like my beloved grandfather, which he had passed 3 years ago. He is the reason why I am so into reading books. My mother always says that my grandfather used to read me every night before bed when I was a baby. I wish I could turn back and hear my grandfather read to me just one more time. The love of my grandparents has always been an inspiration to me. But, what can I say about my parents? My parents have been divorced for 5 years now. It was a peaceful breakup. I remember their divorce and how much I suffered from it. It was very depressive. Plus, I was an only child. That made this whole situation even worse. I just couldn't deal with the fact that my parents weren't together anymore. But I don't care now. They both have their own lives now. I live with my mother, even though I love Dad so much. He is the most kind and has the most generous soul. But, sometimes life doesn't work how you want. I remember at first I felt so guilty that I chose to live with my mother. I used to cry for my dad and how lonely he was. But now he was a girlfriend, and his girlfriend is pregnant. I am happy for him. I really am. I go to my dad's place every week. I love his girlfriend, and she is very kind to me. She says that I will be the one who is going to name their baby. Even my mother is happy for Dad, even though sometimes I think she gets a little jealous because his girlfriend is so much younger than Mom. However, recently something had caught my attention. My mother had been happier than ever. She had been going out a lot. She had been shopping and wearing new clothes. You should have smelled her perfume, and it's very sexual. I think she might be seeing someone. But I don't want to be the one asking her. I want her to be the only one telling me the news if there is any. I remember one day, I didn't go to school because I was sick. My mother didn't know because she was working during that time. The bell rang, and I decided to see who it was. There was no one. But, there was a big bouquet with red flowers and a note. Well, this clearly wasn't for me. I am single, unfortunately. I put the flowers in. I didn't want to read the note first, but the curiosity was killing me. The note said, "See you tonight, get ready by 8. So, yes, my mother was for real seeing someone. I put her flowers in her bed and decided to play it off like I didn't see anything. She came home and saw the flowers. She seemed very shy and embarrassed. But I wanted to make her feel good. I said to her that that was okay and that I wanted her to find her true love. Love has no age and no time. Then, she told me about everything. There was a man called Mitchell, and they had been dating for 1 year. Apparently, Mitchell's wife had died for 3 years now from cancer. They have one child, a son. It must be sad to lose your mother and know that you might not see it ever again. For a minute, I was glad my parents were divorced. At least, I could see and be with them. My mother got ready that night and went out. I was happy for her. She deserves someone to bring her flowers and love her in the best possible way. After some months, my mother told me some very good news. My mother and Mitchell had decided that it was time for us to meet as a whole family. I was excited. We got ready and decided to meet at a restaurant. And there it was, Mitchell and his son. Why didn't my mother tell me that Mitchell's son is the same age as me? I thought he was going to be younger or something. We sat and then started talking about random stuff. Mitchell was so kind and funny. I could tell that he was a good man. But on the other hand, Mitchell's son was so mysterious. Apparently, his name is Duor. He was 2 years older than me. He didn't talk much. He just kept staring. But generally, this date went very well. Days went by, and nothing exciting was happening. The school was almost over for this season. Summer was there. I was excited about summer. Life becomes better. Every summer, my mother and I always have some type of vacation. We go somewhere far, somewhere beaky, and spend some days there. My mother works, so she needs some time off. That's what we did that summer too. But that time, something was different. It wasn't just my mother and me anymore. My mother thought that it would be good if we called Mitchell and his son. I agreed, why not? So that's what we did. We got in the car. A long road was ahead of us. Dior and I were sitting in the back seat, and this way, we had more chances to get to know each other better. Just like Mitchell, Dior was funny too. But I'd always catch him staring at me in a way that I can't describe. He had a perfect style and had a lot of cool rings on his fingers. I couldn't help but look at them. He had beautiful hands. After some hours of driving, I had nothing to do. It was getting boring. I decided to read my books. I got so lost in my book and in what was happening there. Then all of a sudden, I felt that something had touched my shoulder. It was Dior. He had fallen asleep on my shoulder. I didn't want to wake and ruin his sleep. I felt bad. Plus, he smelled so good. The road trip was long, but we finally had made it to our destination, the beach. I spent the whole day napping, but it was beach day all day the next day. I put on my bikini, got myself an iced coffee, and got myself a good book. That's how I spend my beaky days. I love to tan while I am reading. But Dior had something else on his mind. He thought that it would be a great idea if we all took a boat. But my mother hates boats. She gets seasick. Then, he pushed on taking me with him. It was just Dior and me. As we were getting on the boat, I wanted to take my book with me. He said, "Come on, be fun for once." For once. How can he know how fun I am? The first minutes of the boat ride, I was moody about what he had said. But he kept talking and making funny jokes that were hard to stay mad at. Suddenly, he asked me to put sunscreen lotion on his back. Then, he put sunscreen on me, without me asking. I was shy and didn't know what to say. We got back, and I got back to my reading. The next day came. It was my mother's and Mitchell's second anniversary of their relationship. They decided that it would be great if we all went to a fancy dinner. But Dior said that they should go without us. Maybe he was right. They needed some alone time. That's what they did. I decided to stay in for the night. Suddenly, I get a text from Dior, saying that I should meet him in his hotel room. It was across my room. I decided to go since I had nothing to do. He said that we should go to a club near our hotel. We got dressed and decided to go. Even though we were not 21-year-old, they let us in. The vibes were so good, and we danced a lot. We had some drinks. A lot, I must say. We were dancing, and he would grab me by my waist. I was saying to myself, is it the alcohol, or do I really like this guy? Everything happened so fast. We kissed. I didn't mean to kiss him. He was the first to take me to move. I could have stopped him, but I didn't. What was happening with me? We both looked at each other surprisingly. We didn't say a word about what happened. We got to our hotel and went into our separate rooms. The next day had come, and we pretended as nothing had happened. I know that the kiss was a bad thing to do. He is my stepbrother. But, last night I couldn't sleep without thinking of it. He is exactly my type. I'd date him if he weren't my stepbrother. Plus, he was older than me. I liked that fact. I decided to play it off like I don't remember what had happened yesterday. I was going by the beach, and there he was. He was waiting for me. We met and acted like we didn't kiss. We decided to take another boat ride together, hoping that we would discuss what happened yesterday. As long as we left the shore and that nothing could be seen, he came at me. And he kissed me. I still didn't hesitate and didn't say no. I felt guilty, and I didn't want this to happen. I felt like we were betraying our parents. I told him those exact words. He agreed, but he said that he was starting to have a feeling for me. I was starting to feel in a certain way too, but I didn't say anything. There was no need for us to say anything because this thing shouldn't have happened at all. We decided that the moment we were going to be on the shore from the boat ride, we would forget that we ever kissed. And that's what we did. We decided that this would be our little secret. The road trip home wasn't awkward at all. I felt happy that we still could talk and joke around, even after what had happened. For a second, I thought that I could be in love with my stepbrother. But that would be so selfish of me. We kissed because we felt vulnerable during that time. There was nothing else there. Maybe it could be. Who knows? But it is not our time to love. Our parents deserve love more than we do. We are still young, and we know that other souls out there are waiting to fall in love with us. I am just happy to share this here since no one knows about this. I am Rona, and I will tell you the story of my life, the story of what happened a couple of years ago. Where can I start? I was living with my family in a so-called third world country. It was me, my parents, and my little brother. Life was not easy. My mother had no job, and my father was taking less money than we needed to survive. Even though I was only 16-year-old during that time, I wanted to work. I wanted to work for myself and for what I needed. But, where I lived, there weren't many jobs to do for women. That's why my mother had never worked, and I couldn't find a job. All I used to do was go to school and come back. How was the school, you might ask? The school was great, but the people there not so much. I had realized that when you don't have as much money as your friends, you can never feel comfortable around them. They didn't feel comfortable around me either, so that's why I had distanced myself. The house where we lived was so far from my school. We never had a car, and we always used to walk to school. During summer, it was easy, but in the winter, we would freeze to death. During winter, there were hungry dogs that always followed us to school. It was dangerous. Sometimes we would take some food with ourselves so that they wouldn't bite us. But, thank God I had my little brother. Even though I was the big sibling, I felt safe with him. We used to walk to school together. We would discuss our friends, how much money they had, and how lucky they were. My brother and I were the only ones walking, and it was so embarrassing. All of my friends' family had cars. Our friends had new phones. They used to wear all the clothes that were trending during that time. One of the reasons nobody wanted to date me was that my clothes were not trendy. And nobody wanted to date a poor girl. There were times when my brother and I would get back from school, and I couldn't help but complain. The school had gotten me so tired mentally and physically. It was just too much. But, still, I tried to hide it because I knew that it was a hard time for my parents too. They were trying their best. My father was working non-stop, and still, the money was never enough. I knew that he was taking loans from our friends and family. But, he never admitted. But, we knew. People had started to come to our house and ask for their money back. My father was sick and tired of working and then having nothing. I remember it was winter one day, and my brother and I came back from school. When we got home, there were suitcases around our house. I remember asking about what happened. Then, they had told us. They had told us that they had decided to take a dangerous road straight to first world countries. I remember being so exciting and scared at the same time. We were finally going to a better place, to France. If we made it to France, our lives would get better, and my father could pay back the people he took the loan to. We took our clothes, all of our stuff, and some food. There was a big, old truck outside our house. My father had rented it for us. We got in and took a last look at our house and our village. There was a long road ahead of us, and we were just hoping for the better. The road trip was silent, and I knew that a million thoughts were running through my parents' minds. The road trip to the first world country would take us 3 days. We didn't know it, but they would be the most challenging 3 days of our lives. I remember the first day and how good it went. It made us think that this would be easy and that we would arrive there in a minute. We drove and drove, and then we stopped at a hill so we could sleep and take some rest so we could be ready for the next day. We were sleeping in the truck, and there was enough place for all of us. I remember how I couldn't sleep that day, thinking about how our lives would change forever. I was already thinking about the clothes that I was going to buy and the new iPhone that had just launched. That's how I slept that day. We woke up the following day and noticed that the snow had covered the whole place. It was cold. We ate some food and then hit the road without wasting our time. I remember the streets were so icy. We were driving so slow. We were stopped almost at every border by the military forces. They would ask us questions, and they would keep us for hours. Nobody liked refugees. But, we were going there with good intentions, for a good start and a good life. Being stopped at every border took us a lot of time. The next day arrived, and we were ready to have some good sleep. Apparently, that night it had been snowing all night. When we woke up, we noticed that the truck wasn't starting. My father tried to start it, but nothing. Our truck's engines had been frozen because of the weather. I remember how stressed my parents were. They didn't know what to do. It had been hours, and the truck was still not starting. We were just wasting time. We decided to ask for help and see if anybody could fix our truck. But, we had parked our truck somewhere in the mountains so that we could sleep, and there weren't any houses near. My father decided to walk some miles and ask for help as we were staying in the truck waiting. But, there was nothing near us, and it was so cold, my father couldn't walk anymore. We stayed some hours in the truck to see if any car drove near us, but nobody showed up. There was only a little road left ahead of us, and we decided to put our fate into our legs. So, we decided to walk. It was the middle of winter, and it was so cold. We put on all the clothes we had, and we took our food. Walking was so hard, and we didn't even know where we would be spending the night. At that point, we didn't know if we would make it alive. We couldn't walk on the streets, and we had to walk into the depths of the mountains so that the police wouldn't ask us questions. The most challenging part of this story was when we had to cross a river to get away from the police. I will never forget the feeling. The feeling of my clothes getting wet by the river's cold water. My body was shaking, and I couldn't feel my legs. But crossing the river was the only way we could get away from the police and arrive at our destination. France. Our clothes were soaking wet, but we didn't care at that point. We were almost there. Our last most challenging part was spending the night outside. Our clothes were still a little bit wet. We had found an abandoned cabin and slept there on the balcony. The door was locked, but we didn't care. At least we weren't sleeping on snow. I remember getting up every hour in the middle of the night because I was scared if there would be any wild animals near us. I remember seeing my father guarding us. He hadn't slept at all. His nose was all red, and he looked so worried. That night I slept crying, hoping for the best of what was coming next. That night's sleep wasn't the best sleep, but we knew that we would be in France the next day. So, that's what happened. The next day had come, and there wasn't much food left for everyone. There were only 2 sandwiches left, so we shared them and hit the road. Finally, we arrived in France. We weren't looking our best, but we made it. We were tired, and we just needed someone's help. But, I remember the first time that I saw the city of France. I was speechless. It was huge, nothing like my village. It looked like how we imagined and how we dreamed. The land of opportunities. It was snowing there too. There weren't many people around. I remember a policeman approached us. I remember my father's voice shaking, saying to the policeman that we were refugees and needed help. My father was begging for help. I will never forget that policeman's face and how much he had helped us. They took us to a place to stay. It wasn't a 5-star hotel, but we didn't care. We didn't need that. They gave us food and warm clothes. You should have seen my father's face and how happy he was. We all were happy. Our eyes were full of happy tears. I took a warm bath, and I fell asleep by the window while looking at the city. It has been months since we got here, in France. Our life has changed for the better. My father and my mother found a job. My father works as a taxi driver, and my mother works as a waiter. But, they are getting paid very well. At least, my parents won't worry about the essential things to buy for us. My brother and I have started school. Thank God that our school is near the apartment where we live. It's only a 5-minute walk. The people at my new school are so kind, and I have made some good friends here. They respect us even though we are not from France. Everyone at my school works after school, so I decided to work too. Why not? I could have my own money, and I could buy whatever I wanted. Plus, I always wanted to work. We have a neighbor that has a 1-year baby, and she asked me if I could work as a nanny and take care of her child. I accepted. I love children, and it's a fun job that gets paid very well. However, not everything is promised here. We are still just refugees. We are still waiting for the government to give us the final decision. We still don't know if we can stay here forever or go back to our village. It would be a nightmare if we had to get back. I don't miss my village because there's nothing to do there. Plus, we have adopted here very fast. It would be so sad if I had to leave my new school friends here, my job, and this city. Everything is more accessible here. I just wanted to share my story and ask you to pray for me. To pray for my family and all the refugees out there. I don't wish for anyone to go through what we went through. Every refugee story is different, but I know that we all have the courage not only to survive but to preserve and rebuild our shattered lives.
Hi, I'm Emma, and I live in a small city where people are not too much because I love to live a low-key life, and I so much love keeping to myself. My parents complained several times about this type of attitude that I've cultivated, but that's just me. So, as time goes on, they have to take me for who I am. So they already know the type of girl I am, so they always let me be at all time. I'm so much quiet and reserved. I'm not the type of person who likes games or do too much on the daily activities. But I like reading novels and watching a lot of movies, especially comedy movies. Because since I already choose to keep to myself, I have to find a means of catching fun by myself. I attend a high school class where students have the choice to do what they like and want. Whenever I'm in class, I'm always reserved and quiet, always. But I do have friends who always love to force words out of my mouth whenever they are around me. I love going to school every day, if not for anything but for the sake of seeing my friends, because I will surely talk whenever I'm around them. On this beautiful morning when I got to class, I noticed a letter was dropped inside my locker, which was so unusual. I decided to open the letter after the class, but while the teacher was in class teaching, all my mind was on was the letter that was dropped inside my locker. Immediately when the teacher left the class, I opened it, and what I discovered was a love letter, which I did not know who dropped it there. I tried to pay so much attention to every guy I came in contact with in class so as to get who dropped the letter, but it was not too available. After a long period of staying in class during the break hour, my friends came to my seat to meet me, and then they all said we should go outside to get something. On our way out, some guys came our way, and trying to get our attention at first, I looked at all of them, thinking maybe it might be one of them that cultivated the habit of dropping the sticky note inside my locker. But with all their facial expressions, I don't think any of them can do such. They tried stopping us, not moving any step out of there, and all we just have to do is to comply. But all of a sudden, a teacher decided to come our way. Then immediately they noticed that the teacher was coming our way. They all left instantly, and we proceeded in getting what we wanted to go by. I told my friends about the sticky note I discovered inside my locker that morning, and they all laughed at me, saying maybe a guy has been stalking me all this while. They then said that one of us should try coming to school very early so that the guy can be caught. But that guy that dropped the sticky note is just too smart and expert. We tried for days, but we could not get the guy, so I told the ladies to forget the issue, that I'm very sure that one day he will surely reveal his identity. As time goes on, it became a regular routine. Every blessed morning when I get to my seat, I will surely find a sticky note with a love quote inside my locker. At some point, I got annoyed and frustrated, but there's no point yelling because I did not know who was doing such a thing. So I decided to stomach it, and I did not tell it to anyone. One day during school hour, a teacher at school was explaining to us a physics experiment, and he made it as a game because he wanted all the students to participate and be carried along. During this process, all students participating closed their eyes and tasted, perceived, and some liquids to tell what it is based on their taste. It was quite fun because all students were carried along for the first time at school, and we all laughed where someone guessed wrong because we all gave various answers, knowing fully well that our tasting boards are different. I really enjoyed the class that day because it was so much different. The following day in class was Friday, so a group of people in class came together and discussed that we should have a get-together party on Saturday, which is the following day. So they asked the whole class about their opinion concerning the party. To my surprise, everyone was happy to hear that they all turned in. Well, as for me, having a get-together party on Saturday, though the plan was a little bit awkward to me, because I don't really like associating myself with things like that, because I so much love keeping to myself. A venue was picked, and all planned was so fascinating and lovely. Actually, I love the plan because I want to see how it will look for the first time by the beach side, so I decided to hang out that day. When I got home that day, I told my mom about the plan of going to the beach the following day. She was so happy to hear that because she's never seen me going out before. So that night, my mom came into my room and went directly to my wardrobe to select the clothes I will be putting on the following day. When it comes to selecting clothes for an event, my mom is very good at it, and she so much loves me looking good and cute, always. So the day finally came. I woke up so late, maybe because I slept late checking out the clothes my mom was picking for me to wear. I had to rush to the bathroom to have my bath so as to dress up to meet with the event, knowing fully well that I'm late already. After having my bath, I dressed up, looking cute and pretty for the event. After dressing up, I set out for the party immediately. So finally, I got to the venue a little bit late. And trust me, just as planned, all eyes were on me, because I was so much looking gorgeous and pretty. After getting there, a guy named Sean in my class ran towards me to give me a long hug and a peck. After he did that, I was so shy to take a step away from where I was standing. But from the look of things, he's been a long-time crush. Throughout the party, Sean was all over me, because that will be the first time he will have the opportunity of talking to me and expressing himself. We both have a walk together, and he told me a lot of things about me which I was so surprised to hear. Then I knew he has been the guy stalking me. Actually, Sean has been the guy dropping all those sticky notes with love quotes under my locker. At first, when he told me he was the one, I was so mad with him. Then I told him that he's a coward. If not, he would have come to me himself and not by note. Then he said he did not know what I was going to say because he did not want to be too forward. Then we both smiled and laughed together. Then we moved on with the party. We hung out and made a walk through a beach and had fun, and then we all decided to go to a friend's apartment, so a small group of us went into the apartment, and here comes the idea to play a blind taste game, similarly with a game we once played at school. I was so anxious to play the game, but at the same time, I didn't want to join. I simply refused, but then I thought of it that I am the one who is really good in tasting things and smell very good, so I later decided to participate in the end. So as usual, the game started and was getting more interesting and fun, but still yet throughout this period, Sean did not leave my side for once. Well, he might be thinking he might not have this type of opportunity again. So everyone's turn during the game came and went, and here it comes my turn. So a guy closed my eyes and pushed my head towards the object. So I tried to perceive the object. I was not getting it. Then I tried touching it with my nose. At first it was a strong object as I touched it with my nose a bit and said, "It's a pen," as it does not smell at all. They all smiled. And then I was wondering what could it be. I then gave another try, but the object this time was softer. I was then surprised, thinking within me, maybe the object has been changed. But then I asked if they changed the object, and changing the object is outside of game rules. They all said no, that it's still the same object, and I thought, what could it be? But I had no answer. After a little moment of thinking, I grabbed the object with my hand to know what the shape of the object looks like. Then I feel it was a tall object, similar to cylinder, and I immediately opened my eyes. I was so much afraid because it is something inappropriate. When I opened my eyes, what I saw was simply a banana, which was so different to what I felt when my eyes were closed and everyone was laughing at me. I was annoyed, and only Sean could notice it then. He came to walk me home. He explained to me that it was a banana, but still yet, I disagree. I just told him to close the discussion. When I got back home, I greeted my mom with a weird look on my face. Then I went straight to my room. She gave me some minutes to be by myself before she came to meet me. Then she asked me what happened at the party. Then I narrated everything to her, not leaving behind the aspect where Sean came to give me a long hug and a peck. She told me not to be annoyed about the game, though I have forgotten about how I felt during the game period because the thought of Sean is now all over me. So Mom asked me to gist her about Sean. So I did, and we all laughed and I was happy all through the night. When I got back to school, I discovered that I did not see the sticky note as usual. Then I looked straight down to Sean's seat, and then I saw him smiling. Then I laughed as feel. So the class started and immediately the teacher came in. Then every other student told the teacher about everything that happened to me at the party, and they laughed. But then the teacher said to me, he will call me one day and tell me a secret behind this game. Then he left the class, but within me I am still not sure if the object was banana at first, or they changed the object during the game, as it softened and changed, and I am still confused, and I will never play that game again. This is the reason why I didn't want to participate in the game earlier. See what it all turns out to be? Please let me know in the comments if you think they've changed the object, or am I just thinking wrong?
I am Rita, and I will take you back to the 1999s. What was life like in the 1999s? In 1999 I was only 16-year-old. I remember it like it was yesterday. Life was good living together with the whole family. There was me, Mom, Dad, and my two little brothers. I was the oldest child in the family. Being the oldest child means having responsibilities. I remember I used to help my mother around the house. I practically raised my two little brothers. They are not so little anymore. Life was easy back then. We were happy and grateful for what we had. We were grateful for our little village and all its good. We took care of our lands, and the grounds thanked us by giving us food. Fruits of all kinds. I remember how much we loved our animals, our big, healthy cows. I was only 16-year-old, but I was fearless. I remember wanting to ride our horses, but my dad never let me. Winters back then were never easy. But it was that season that brought us all together in one room. The winters were so cold, and we used to all sleep together. We didn't know that something terrible would happen during the coldest days of winter. As far as I remember, it was morning, and we were staying inside our house when suddenly we heard people screaming. We didn't even have the chance to look through the window and see what was happening. My father came running and said that the military forces had gotten into our villages. I am pretty sure that I didn't even understand what my father had said back then. But, judging by how his face looked and how his voice sounded, I knew that something terrible was going to happen to us. I remember my mother running fast, getting clothes and some little food. My little brothers were crying their eyes out. I remember I was so scared. We took as many things as possible in such a little time and got outside the house. I wish we didn't get outside of our house. I wish I could delete the memory when I looked at all the people that lived in the village. Everyone was crying and screaming. Some babies were just born. Some people were sick and could barely walk. I remember that some couldn't find their loved ones. They were screaming their names so loud, desperately. The military forces had forced our village to move and cross the border. That time I didn't know what it meant. But we just kept walking, not knowing what to do or where to go. We thought that we should follow the crowd. We had worn 2 jackets each, but still, it was one of the coldest days since I can remember. We were walking, not knowing that that would be the last time we would be together in our village. I remember myself crying because we had left all the animals behind us. Even the animals were shouting and screaming, and even they knew that something was not all right. We were walking and walking till we couldn't feel our legs. The mountains of our villages were full of snow and ice, making it harder to walk. I remember like it was yesterday. My feet were so cold because the water had already got into my boots. At that time, my little 2 brothers were only 10-year-old and 8-year-old. My 8-year-old brother, Tommy, cried non-stop, and I carried him because I felt terrible. I didn't want to cause stress to my parents because they were already very anxious. That day, I remember seeing my father crying for the first time. It broke my heart because he had never cried before in front of us. And, seeing a man crying like that, like a child, my eyes are full of tears just thinking about that. As we were walking and following the crowd, our parents had written some stuff on our arms. As I remember, they had written our names, birth names, and the village we were in. They used to do this just in case we went missing or something. This made us even more scared and anxious. I remember that just the thought of getting separated from my family would make me go insane. After some hours of walking, I remember that we got in a truck. That truck could barely fit all of us. We were more than 100 people. We were holding hands non-stop because you could literally get lost in that truck. I remember that I could hear a thing my parents were saying. Everyone was crying and screaming. All of a sudden, the truck had stopped. I remember us thinking that the truck had problems, and that we had to stop. But, no, the military forces were there and had stopped the truck. The military forces made everyone get out of the truck and separated us into 2 groups. We were separated from our parents. They took my mother and father and then told the truck driver to go. To this day, this was the most challenging moment of my life. I couldn't hold the tears and be strong for my 2 little brothers. I broke down. Luckily enough, an older woman was there in the truck and tried to make me feel less worried. I remember every word she said to me. Don't worry, they will be back. To this day, she still was one of the kindest women I've ever met. She used to say that if we didn't find our parents, she wouldn't leave us alone. She would take us with her. And this made me feel better and safe for a while. I wish I could find her and thank her because she said things I needed to wear, and things I wanted to hear. The drive was long, and we got hungry. We had a backpack that my parents had packed for us. There was bread and a bottle of water. We shared that with my 2 little brothers, pieces to pieces, but that wasn't enough. It had been 1 day since we hadn't seen our parents and we were worried. I didn't know if they were dead or alive. I didn't know where they were and if they had eaten anything. I remember not sleeping at all. scared if the military forces were going to separate me from my little brothers. They were my responsibility now. We had welcomed a new day, and that older woman had given us some food. To this day, I still don't know what we would do if this older woman didn't give us something to eat. We would starve. I remember what the people used to talk about in that truck. They said that we would all die. I used to cover my little brother's ears so they couldn't hear anything. Then, some good news. Someone shouted, saying that we had arrived at the border and were ready to cross it. They told us to change to different vehicles, so we did. I took my little brother and went into a giant truck. There were people there, and all of the people there, I noticed a face. It was my mother. I couldn't believe my eyes. I shouted with all my lungs and said her name. She came into us running, and we just started hugging. And this was one of the best moments of that time until I had asked my mother something. I asked about my father and where he was. I remember her crying and saying that she didn't know where Dad was. She had said that the military forces had separated them into two groups, females and males, and that she hadn't seen him since the day we all got separated. We shouted his name and looked everywhere to see if we could find him. But we didn't. We got in the truck together with my mother, and then we crossed the border. We had no other choice but hope to see our father after crossing the border. We thought that maybe he would be there, waiting for us. The drive was long and sad. I remember that we couldn't keep our minds off our father. Where was he? Was he okay? Was he hungry? After we crossed the border, we had asked around about my father, but we couldn't find him. We asked our military forces too. They kept saying that he would be back tomorrow. But tomorrow came, and my father wasn't there. They kept saying us the same words, over and over again, that he would be back tomorrow. Days went by, but we couldn't miss a day without searching for him. Then, we found out that we weren't the only ones searching for someone. Parents were searching for their kids. Kids were searching for their parents. Someone said that the military forces had killed them, but I remember not accepting this option. We weren't safe to go back to our village, so a family had sheltered us. We had stayed there for a month. We ate and slept there. That family had helped us a lot. They were a big family, but they never insisted on getting us food. They were so generous. As far as I remember, their names were Anna and Sakal. They had been married for years and had 8 children together. I remember the months that I spent there made me feel like I was at home. They had a farm, and they had animals, just like we did. It made me feel like everything was all right. Their children were so friendly and kind. I remember that the war and the winter were already over, and we would just spend hours outside playing like everything was just fine. But then, I'd watch my mother's face and see how sad she was. They even offered to help us find my father, but there was no success. By that time, it had been almost 2 months, and we still hadn't heard from our father. It was time that we went home. To our bed, to our animals, to our old life back. I remember the ride back home, and I remember how sad it was. It was like we were leaving our father behind. Our last hope was that our father would have been there when we arrived at our village. He would have fed the chickens and the cows. He would have made our bed, and he would have been waiting for us. We had arrived at our village, and nothing felt the same anymore. The spring had sprung. I remember the trees of our village and how green they had been. The mountains looked breathtaking, and at that moment, I realized how much I loved and missed my village. However, the military forces had burnt our houses to the ground. There were no memories left, just ashes. And our animals had left. And the sad part of all this was that our father wasn't there. We had asked some of the neighbors if they had seen him, but nobody had seen where he was. Many of our neighbors were not found, and some of them were announced dead. We had to start our lives from the start. Without you, Dad. To this day, we still don't know your fate, but we pray for you every day. We don't know if you are alive or somewhere searching for us, but all I know is that we miss and think about you every day of our lives. We were lucky to survive, but my life has never been the same again without you, Dad. When humans start wars, they don't know the consequences. They don't know how precious life is until it is lost. A war can never make peace. A war can never make someone a winner. All it does is create a mess and bring the destruction of humanity. My name is Beatrix, and I just wanted to tell a story about what happened 2 years ago in my life. A lot has happened in 2 years. 2 years ago, I was only 16-year-old. Life was not easy. I grew up in a very toxic household. I grew up with my parents fighting all the time. I don't know if there was a day when my parents didn't fight about something. But, when it came to me, they were completely different people. My parents are the sweetest parents anyone could ever ask for. They care about me. They love me. I am their only child. I was spoiled and loved like no other. But, sometimes, love is not just enough. Marriage is not just about love. Marriage is about commitment, and being responsible for what you do and say. Communication is key, but my parents didn't have that. I was only 16-year-old, but I was old enough to notice that they didn't know how to communicate with each other. My parents always fought, but I knew that it wasn't that serious until one day. I remember it like it was yesterday. I got woken up from the sound of my mother screaming to my father. My father came home late the other night, and my mother had found out that he cheated. My mother decided to file for divorce, even though my dad begged her to stay. I remember I felt so bad for my mother. No woman deserves to get cheated on. They decided not to live together anymore. One day they had asked me a very important question. They asked me if I'd choose to stay with my mother or with my father. I loved them equally. I mean, they are my parents. But, the one that got cheated on was my mother. I couldn't be the one to let her down too. Plus, my mother had always been like a father too. She has always been there for me. So, that's what I did. I chose my mother. We left home. At that time, my mother didn't have a job. We had no job and nowhere to live. The only person that we could call to help us was my grandmother. My grandmother lived alone, so we had the opportunity to live there for some months until we figured some things out. Living at my grandma's house was fun. My mother was searching for a job. So, she was always out doing job interviews. Most of the time, I was home only with my grandmother. I loved her cooking. She cooked with love. She had told me some of her secret recipes. We would talk for hours. She would tell me about her life when she was a teenager and how much she missed my grandpa. I felt safe at my grandmother's house. The vibes were different. But, during that time, my mother was in a terrible place. My father had always been wealthy. When we went to the court, he won everything. His lawyers helped him take all of his wealth for himself, and not give anything to my mother or me. My father was almost making me go with him. But, I was old enough to choose. To this day, I still don't regret going with my mother. My father had shown his true colors. If he really loved us, he would help us and give us some money. At least for a good start. My mother struggled to find a job, and I remember feeling so bad. She was trying so hard. I remember wanting to quit school to work something and help her. But she didn't let me. She always said that I should work hard and finish school to be independent. Months went by, and my mother still hadn't gotten a job. At that time, my mother had turned into a whole different person. She was angry at life, at everything. Even at 16-year-old, I understood that she felt like everyone had let her down. At some point, she was ready to give up. She stopped going to job interviews. I remember how she didn't even want to get a bath. She was deep in depression, and she always used to fight with my grandmother. My mother used to put the anger that she had on my grandmother. One day, they got into a huge pointless argument, and my mother had enough. My grandmother was crying, saying that we didn't need to go. But, my mother thought that this would be for the better. This way, my mother would try harder and not give up so easily. My grandmother gave us our grandfather's old car. She couldn't drive anymore, so she thought we would put it to good use. She gave us her car, food, clothes and some money. It was winter, and we had no idea where to go. I remember us driving with no destination. It was snowing so much. It was almost Christmas time. It should have been the most wonderful time of the year. But, not this time. We drove and drove. We didn't know where to go, and we hadn't much money with us. It was the middle of the night, and we got tired. We found a mountain not so far from the city, and we decided to park the car there and stay the night. We shouldn't even have parked there. We would have been arrested. But, we had no other choice. I remember I was so scared to sleep in the car. We were scared if someone would knock in our windows and try to kidnap us or something. I hadn't had much sleep on the first night, but then I got used. But, the car was a blessing. Without it, we would be sleeping on the streets in the cold. We lived in our car for almost 2 weeks. It was the most challenging time of our lives. At that time, I wasn't going to school anymore. So, we kind of just stayed and hoped that my mother could find a job. I missed my bed, and I missed having a hot shower. It had been days that I hadn't had a proper meal. We used to eat cheap fast food with the bit of money that our grandmother gave us. The nights were so cold, and we used to sleep hugging each other. I remember asking my mother to go back to our grandmother's house, but my mother just wanted to make it alone. Even though we lived in the car, she never lost a job interview. I remember how she used to play it off at times like everything was all right, and how she used to sing and dance to not make me feel worried. But I knew that deep inside, she was sad and anxious until one day, one perfect day, I was staying in the car, and I saw my mother by the window. She told me some good news. She said that she had got a job at a restaurant, and she will start working from tomorrow. My mother told the restaurant owner about our life, our situation, and he said that we could sleep there, at his restaurant. Our life was about to be changed forever, and we just didn't know it yet. We took our car and drove there. The restaurant was so beautiful and comfy. We met with the boss. My mother's boss was so generous and kind, and he was named Mitchell. He had asked me how school was going, but I told him that I couldn't afford school right now. I told him that I wanted to work and help my mother. He accepted that, and he had made me an assistant. I worked as my mother's assistant. Life was beautiful during that time. I could finally have some good sleep and eat some warm, good meal. I woke up early, worked, and had met some beautiful people. It felt good living and having a routine. It had been 2 years since my mother and I worked at the restaurant. I could tell that my mother was happy. I was happy too. During our time working at Mitchell's restaurant, something beautiful had happened. Love had happened. My mother fell in love with her boss, Mitchell. Who wouldn't love Mitchell? He was so kind and gentle, and he had helped us a lot. He became like my father in such a short time. He had never been married before because he had always been busy with his restaurant. But he loved my mother more than anyone before. He loved kids, and he treated me like I was his daughter. However, my mother's goal now is to be independent. She knew what she went through when she got divorced. She doesn't want to make that mistake again. For those 2 years that we had been working, my mother and I saved money. Since my mother always wanted to have something on her own, we decided to open a coffee shop. We thought it would be a great idea since I wasn't going to school during that time. I wanted to take a break and just kind of put our life together. Plus, my mother needed my help. We were excited about this, and we had decided to tell Mitchell. Even though we wouldn't be working at his restaurant, we loved the idea. He said that that's okay and that we should follow our dreams. And that's what we did. We followed our dreams. New York has the most beautiful places and views, so it was easy for us to find a place to open our coffee shop. Mitchell had helped us a lot. He had helped us with painting the walls of our store. We decided to give the store a vintage look, and it turned out so good. The coffee shop was so small, but it was so cute. The coffee shop had large windows, and you could see everything that was happening outside. It's a place where you could bring your favorite book and just read for hours while drinking your coffee. Our coffee shop is open 24/7. I work there as a waiter, and I love it. At first, it was just my mother and me, but now we have 4 employees. All of our 4 employees are females. Our employees are women that needed help, just like we did. It feels good helping people. I know how it feels to need help and not get any. Every day is a good day at our coffee shop. Every day we meet new beautiful people, and I have made a lot of friends. After some time, my mother and Mitchell decided not to waste time and have a wedding. It was one of the most beautiful weddings that I have ever seen. It felt good seeing my mother in a white dress and happy. Maybe it is time for me to have a brother or a sister. Who knows? My mother and I often visit the grandmother. They are on good terms now. We had given her car back, even though she insisted on not to. But we wanted to leave everything that reminded us of bad times. My grandmother comes to our coffee shop almost every day. She says that my coffee is her favorite coffee to drink. I am going to school now, after that big break. Every day after school, I come here to our coffee shop, and I help my mother. Are you curious about what happened with my father? Well, I don't know what happened with him. We hadn't heard from him since my mother filed the divorce. He hadn't even called to see if we were okay. But that doesn't matter. We are okay now. Better than never. I just wanted to share my story and say that life works in very unpredictable ways, and that you should never give up. Life has its ups and downs, and that's the beauty of it. We should embrace the good and the bad times.
My girlfriend is pregnant, and I'm only 15 years old. Hi, I'm Matt, and I want to talk to you about something that happened a couple years ago that changed my life forever. I remember I was in junior year, and we were all very stressed out because we didn't know who to invite to the prom. At that time, that was the most important thing. And since I was a basketball player, it was even harder because I had to pick the sexiest girl, and I was afraid of being rejected. One day during the internship, I saw a girl sitting there. She looked gorgeous and seemed not to fit in, and I knew that she was the one for me. I ended up as the worst player that day, and I thought I would die of shame. That's what brought us together. That's how she noticed me. Everything was very fast in our relationship, and we liked the same things, and we thought we were the perfect match. We kissed the first time that same afternoon, and 2 weeks later we were officially dating. I didn't know that much about sex, and I didn't really give any importance to contraceptives. This is why, more than once, we had unprotected sex. We did not believe that anything bad could happen to us, and we preferred not to think about the consequences. Of course, that was a terrible idea. 2 months after we were together for the first time, my girlfriend called me very worried, telling me that she had a pregnancy test and that was positive. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. At first I was very annoyed, then I got even more frightened. I wasn't prepared to be a dad. This wasn't how it should be one of the best years of my life. Things did not disappear on the next day, and I had to take care of this new situation. The hardest thing was to talk to my parents, who had a lot of plans for my life. And now all that was about to go in the garbage. Luckily, I plucked up courage and spoke to them because they immediately began to support me and no longer felt alone or lost. They explained to me all I had to do, so I finished my school year while working at night to get as much money as possible. And even though I didn't feel anything for my girlfriend, I never stopped supporting her, even when she didn't want to see me. The most troubling thing was the day she had to give birth, since this day came 2 weeks early, and I don't know if I was prepared for what was coming. All my doubts disappeared when I saw my daughter, but I realized that my life would never be the same. My classmates didn't understand my new worries, and I could no longer talk to them about the same things. I had to work and study at the same time so I could take care of my daughter, and although things did not go as expected with my girlfriend, we were good friends, with a daughter in common. Now she is my reason to become a better person every day. And although sometimes I wonder how everything would have been if this had not happened, I always think I would not change anything I have now. I grew up as a person, and now I am a good man, a good father. This was not easy for me, and I'm sure everything would have been easier if I had someone to talk to about it. That's why I invite you to subscribe to this channel and find out more stories like mine and many of us, so you won't have to feel alone.
My Mom and I. Please, real story animated. Make my story animated. Hi, I'm Tiffany, and I'm almost 17, and I'm fun to be with, like adventures, and in my melancholic nature, I love taking risks. But I don't tolerate it when I'm underrated or intimidated. I love my parents, honestly. The open secret remains that their incompatibility is nothing good to write home about. And that's what kills my joy most times. Dad has always complained about Mom's infidelity in their marriage. The last straw that broke the camel's back was on one fateful day I was right in my room while I believed that Mom had already gone to bed. And for all we know, Dad was gone for a business trip in Australia, and we expected his arrival in 2 days' time. Suddenly, I began to hear a manly voice in Mom's room. Could Dad have come back by this time? Oh no! I called Dad's line, and his autoresponder responded that he was in a meeting. That means Dad isn't in town. Then who is this man that I'm hearing his voice in Mom's room? Then, in my suspense mood, I drew nearer to Mom's door to hear this voice better, and lo, it was the black bug guy I normally see Mom drop off whenever she came to pick me up from school. Oh, really? I guess she decided to bring this big guy, Mr. Frank, home tonight, because the dad isn't at home. I can hear the romantic voices and actions, unlike Dad, who isn't perfectly romantic. I started peeping through the door handle. I could not believe my eyes. As cool as the evening was, Mom's body was so inviting to Mr. Frank that he couldn't hold his emotions anymore. And then he made a move towards her. Suddenly, they were already floating on the cloud, gazing into each other's eyes. Frank gently pulls her so close to his daring heart, hoping they do not part ways even for a second. As Mom wrapped in his arms, imagining them taking a journey into time together, breathing passionate words of love into his ears. Like a bolt from the blues, his fingertips stroke softly throughout her hair with such divine affection and care. Frank's body, creating heat of passion, building within, emitting vibes that erupt deep down her gentle soul, and wrap her in his arms, imagining eternity. As he felt the smoothness of her skin, his mind fantasized as their bodies interlocked in the sea of emotions, creating much energy and passion, heating up deep down their souls. The response was too real for Mom to believe this is happening to him. I can see that from Mom's body language. She softly said to him, "Frankie, come and be lost within me forever. I feel myself being a part of you from the onset. That I dragged you into the car has been all about Frank inside my mind, and the seconds fleets into minutes, minutes ticking into hours, and the hours clicking into eternity. It's just a fantasy with such a wonderful design as we both float downstream to where we could be." He kissed her so passionately, holding out dreams of daring chances as I feel like flying on angel's wings with you. Frank whispered to her succulent ears, just as the cool morning breeze gathers where shadows will be at sunrise. He held her hands with lips locked in unison until they stroll into the path of scented bliss, till the dream ends in the terrestrial sky before the cock crows. Oh my goodness, I realize that I've actually been stooping all night in front of Mom's door, following every bit of their moves. I was lucky enough. It was a Saturday morning, and I dozed back to my room because my sleep was actually deprived of me by the two lovebirds. With the look of things, Mom seems to feel very much safe and cared for with Mr. Frank. Then I began to understand what the bone of contention may be in my parents' soured relationship. Mom really needed a man to care for her and treat her like a queen she is, and not business conference today, business meeting tomorrow. That fateful Saturday morning, I was woken up by the shouts and voices of grievances and anger. And I heard my dad's voice very clear, roaring like a lion, just as usual whenever he is scolding at Mom. I was getting confused the more this time. Did I mistake Dad for Mr. Frank? Just as usual, I crept out of my room. This time, Mom's room was not locked. It was wide open. No, it can't be. I have never seen Mom and Dad in such atmosphere of emotions and bond before. When I came close to her room, I saw him. It was Dad. I greeted both, and of course, I didn't expect them to respond to my greetings anyway. They continued in exchanging words. Then I knew there is a fire on the mountain because Dad came back with an early morning flight. He said on getting to Australia, the meeting was held in a jiffy, and he had to make his way back to the state. Then I heard Mom screaming, "Go, go, go!" I'm tired and fed up with all these. It's over between us. That was how Mom and Dad got separated. Then, according to the law, I live with my mom till date, believing that someday a miracle will happen and both of them will come together again. However, I love my parents. I just needed more. More care, more attention, more love, and more togetherness. Sincerely, when I see other kids together with their parents go on vacations, shopping, sports, and all that, I feel jealous. During my 16th birthday, I wished I could get all I wanted in my parents. The atmosphere was smiling at me as I blow out the candlesticks, standing in front of a gigantic cake with my both parents standing beside me. One on the left and one on the right, and then they both handed over something wrapped in a gift bag. What could it be? I thought aloud. Wow, it's a phone! I mean, 2 different lovely phones. What a birthday! Then the music was rolled, and I danced and danced in my Cinderella pink gown. Unfortunately, it was a dream. How I wish this is not a mere dream, but a reality. But I believe in dreams becoming reality. I believe it will come to pass one day. Oh yes, it is my birthday. How I wish it would be celebrated in a grand style. It is funny because when I turned 16, my mom promised to buy me a phone. I kept reminding her about that until one day a strange event that I couldn't understand. Something happened after turning me around a couple of times, and for my 16th birthday, my dad wanted to buy me a phone, but my mom never wanted to see me with him or allow him to do anything for me. Note that my mom is this type of independent woman. She insisted that she wants to buy it for me, and I was happy because finally I'm going to have my own phone. On my birthday, Mom did not throw any party around for me. All I got was an early morning pat on my back and whispering, "Happy birthday, my little angel. I promise I'm going to get your phone today." Wow! That sounds interesting, and trust me, I kept reminding her that day. "Mom, my phone!" On that day, I waited till evening. The waiting was too long. My mom keeps saying a bit later, but suddenly, she asked me to dress up, of which I did, although she was acting as someone who was waiting for somebody until finally she got the call from a colleague which she was waiting for, and we head to shopping. I enjoy driving with Mom, so we went in her car. We passed the store where we should stop and buy the phone. "Mom, that's the shop," I said in excitement. Rather, she apologized that she needed to visit her colleague at the castle. As a child, there are things I don't debate with Mom. We arrive at the colleague's house, and it was a big house. I loved it. He had 3 cars and 2 dogs. Mom knows that I like dogs, so she said to me, "Tiffany, you play with the dogs, and I will get back pretty quick." "Yes, Mom," I responded. I started playing with Japs and Jade. As I was engrossed in the fun, after some time another man with a big black car entered the house, and then comes another one, and after 5 minutes, another one. I was wondering what is going on. My mom came to meet this colleague, and here are 3 more visitors in there, and I'm not seeing my mom coming out. So I decided to go inside, and upon approach, no one was in the living room. It was silence except the weird noise coming from far away, and it sounded like someone is clapping. One door was opened in one of the rooms, but all of the rooms were dark or less lighted, and I came closer and called Mom. No one answered, and then I came even closer, and the clapping sound started increasing. Clap, 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 and sometimes even faster, clap, clap, clap. And then I heard someone saying, "Yeah," and again, clap, clap, clap. And then I heard the voice of Mom saying, "Yeah, yeah, ah, you are good." Then she increased the speed of the exclamation. "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah! Oh, thank you, yeah, yeah, and finally, yes! Let's do it, I thought. This is a fight, or what's going on? At this moment, I called loudly, "Mom, are you okay?" Everything stopped, and they all get out saying, "Yes, let's do it. Congratulations." But then I asked Mom, what was that clapping noise? And all that she said was, I pitched them an idea for a startup business, and yes, they agreed to fund the project. But then one thing that got me thinking was the physical appearance of the three men. They were sweating profusely, looking like men that just engaged on a physical combat, sapped of all their energy with this post-ejaculation, their minds numbed down, tired, and walking slowly, gulping down some drink. Immediately we went to the store, but while we were going, I asked her what were those weird noises, and she said it was nothing serious. They were all excited. And yes, I know she was excited because when she got out from that room, she was a bit reddish in her face somehow, and her voice was cracky, because she really shouted so much. My mom also told me not to discuss what happened with anyone for any reason. I knew she was warning me about this because of my dad. He calls me every 2 days to know what's happening around Mom, and she also told me that this need to be kept secret forever. Forever? Why is she holding this event so tight? For me, I see no big deal in it. Oh, but I will adhere to her instructions. With my sense of curiosity, I also asked her, why are all her colleagues men? There is no other female amongst them except you. She responded that they couldn't make it that day, but would come in the next meeting. I'm glad that finally my mom is happy. And she's going to make her dream come true. And I've got a new phone. But what was weird is that my mom never started that business, and now we are almost 1 year from there. This also means that my phone is 1 year old too. But I hope she will buy me a new one when I turn 17 next week. What do you guys think? What should I do so my mom will buy me a new phone? Please, like this video if you think it was not a business consultation. And leave a comment if you think it was something else going on.
I left my sound at max on the phone accidentally and watched an 18+ video on bath. My name is Jessica. I am 20 years old. I live in Florida. I had a very rough background because my mom died while I was 15 years. The death brought me a lot of pain. 5 years after, I am yet to recover from the death of my mom. I haven't forgiven my dad since my mom died because he was among the causes of my mom's death. The doctors confirmed that my mom died as a result of internal bleeding. My dad was a drunkard. He usually comes home drunk every day. My mom kept telling him to stop, but he didn't. One day, he came home drunk. My mom talked to him like she used to anytime he comes home drunk. I didn't know what came over him that day. He hit my mom. He hit her severely that she had to be rushed to a hospital. After 3 days, my mom was discharged from the hospital, but she was still not 100% okay. She fell sick again, but she didn't go to the hospital early. When she died, the doctors carried out an autopsy on her. The result of the autopsy showed that she died of an internal injury that she sustained when my dad raised his hands on her. My dad was sorry for his action, but the deed has already been done. He was charged with manslaughter, but he was later released after spending 2 months in prison. 3 years after the death of my mom, my dad remarried. He married a woman from Florida. He invited only a few people to the wedding ceremony because he didn't want people to know that he was getting married. I didn't get to meet the woman he married until the night of the wedding when she came home. She came with a 12-year-old boy that has another father. I didn't want to live with them, but I had no option. I graduated from primary school a few days after my dad's wedding. 6 months after, I enrolled in a high school. When I got to high school, I made a lot of friends. After closing from school, I will go to my friend's place. Sometimes, I will be there until late in the evening before I returned home. I was just happy with anything that will take me away from my dad's wife. One day, I came home very late. My stepmom was curious to know where I was coming from. She started ranting in the sitting room that I am fond of going out and returning late. She said I am a small girl and that is not good for me. From the bottom of her heart, I knew her advice was good. But she wasn't doing it with good intention. She intended to spike my father up against me. She continued ranting in the sitting room. She expected my dad to say something, but he didn't. He kept looking at her. When he finished eating his food, he went straight into his room. The next day, my stepmom's son Philip saw me sitting in the sitting room and he sat close to me. At first, I wanted to leave his sight, but I noticed that my dad was looking at me, so I kept my calm. A few seconds later, My dad walked away from the sitting room. Philip noticed that I was waiting for my dad to leave the sitting room so that I can walk away from him. Therefore, as soon as my dad walked away, he started begging me not to leave. I asked him why he was begging me. He said he knows what I wanted to do. I asked him what he claimed to know. He said he knows I want to walk away from him. He said I should not do that. I asked him why I should be sitting with him when we have nothing to discuss. He said he has something to discuss with me. I said he should say whatever he wants to say because I am listening. I was already up from my seat when I was talking. He pleaded with me that I should sit before he can say what he wants to say. For a while, I told myself that I do not need to transfer the aggression in me to him. I thought within myself that he wasn't the one that offended me. I sat as he instructed and I told him to say what he wants to say. Philip started by apologizing. He said he knew his mom went overboard yesterday. He said since his mom came to the house, we have been living like enemies. He said it's not supposed to be like that. He said we are all living in the same house, so we should live like one big family. He said there is no gain in living like enemies in the same house. I sat down for a while and thought about what he said. I thought within me that everything Philip said was the truth. I said to Philip that I understood everything he said perfectly. I said I don't have any issues with his mom. I said I just feel like his mom doesn't like me. I told him that I think that his mom sees me as a threat. He said his mom does not see me as a threat. He said his mom is a very nice woman. He said the issue I am having with his mom was because I have not fully understood who she is. He said once I understand her perfectly, we wouldn't have issues again. He said he would talk to his mom and make her see the need to live as one happy family. He said he knows his mom will listen to him. I told Philip that I don't have any problem with his mom. I said if she is ready to live with me peacefully, I will also live with her peacefully. Philip left the sitting room and went into his mom's room. I didn't know what he told her, but I believed he told her about the reconciliation. 20 minutes after, Philip and his mom walked into the sitting room. I didn't look at her face because I was still angered by what she did to me the previous day. She then sat close to me on the couch and asked for forgiveness. She said she knew we haven't been living as a family since she came into the house. She said she knows that the fault is from her. She said she is ready to make amends and make us live like one big family. I was happy to hear that. I told her I don't have any issue with her. I said she is old enough to be my mom. Therefore, she ought to take me as a child. I said she ought to treat me the same way she treats her son Philip. She said I should forget what has passed and let us start a new chapter. I told her that I heard everything she said. She said to prove to me that she is happy with me, she will cook anything I want for dinner. I told her to prepare what my dad wants rather than what I want. She said my dad doesn't have any issue with shat she cooks. She said my dad eats whatever she cooks without complaining. She said I have to mention what she will prepare for dinner. I told her to cook fried rice and chicken. She said my chicken will be the biggest. She left after I told her what to cook, but Philip remained in the sitting room. Philip and I discussed a lot of things. He asked about my academics and other stuff. He urged me to show him anything that I have been taught in school that I do not understand. At exactly 7 p.m., my stepmom served dinner. She sent Philip to call my dad, who has been in his room since morning. When my dad came to the dining, he was surprised to see me eating in the dining with my stepmom and Philip. Before we settled our dispute, I do not eat in the dining. Anytime I am served my food, I either eat it in the sitting room or my room. Another thing that surprised my dad was the way Philip and I were talking while we were eating. My dad was forced to talk. My dad said he cannot understand what is happening in the house. He said whatever it is, he is happy with what he is seeing. He said this is how we are supposed to be. He said we are supposed to be one happy family. My stepmom told my dad that we have settled all disputes and we are now living as one big family that we are. My dad was very happy. He said my stepmom has just made his day with what she told him. He said what he heard calls for celebration. He said we should all prepare to go to the beach the next day. Philip and I screamed when we heard about going to the beach. None of us have gone to the beach before. I have been hearing about how fun the beach is, but I haven't had the opportunity to go. So, when my dad mentioned the beach, it was as if he knew what I wanted. After dinner, we all went into our separate rooms and slept. Philip and I woke up very early the next day in anticipation of visiting the beach. After taking my bath and putting on my dress, I went to check on Philip in his room. When I go to his door, I knocked and Philip answered. Philip said I should wait for him in the sitting room because he is taking his bath. I walked back to the sitting room and sat alone. I put on the television because I was bored and there was no one to talk to. 10 minutes later, Philip joined me in the sitting room. He was looking very handsome. He sat close to me and we watched television together. 20 minutes later, my stepmom and my dad came out of their room. My stepmom was already prepared while my dad was still not prepared. My mom went into the kitchen so that breakfast will be ready before my dad finished his preparation. 20 minutes later, my dad came out prepared. No sooner had he sat down in the sitting room than my stepmom called us to the dining. We ate breakfast as a family. After eating breakfast, we walked straight to my dad's and drove off to Miami Beach. We left home at exactly 10:20 a.m. and we arrived at Miami Beach at exactly 11:50 a.m. Miami Beach is a good sight to behold. It has a beautiful environment. Fun seekers from all over the world were gathered at Miami Beach. We had a lot of fun. Philip and I played in the water. We ate a lot of things that were sold there. The beach was in a carnival-like mood because it was during a public holiday. We ate together and drank together. We took photographs together too. We enjoyed ourselves as one big family. We left Miami Beach at around 6 p.m. We got home around 7:30 p.m. When we got home, we sat in the sitting room and talked about our experiences at the beach. My stepmom did not bother to go to the kitchen because we had already eaten to our satisfaction at the beach. At exactly 9 p.m., my dad left us and went to his room. A few minutes later, my stepmom stood from her seat and walked to her room. Philip and I continued our gist after they left. We chatted until 11 p.m. before we both went to our respective rooms. I was happy throughout that week. When I got to school on Monday, I told my closest friends what happened in our house. It surprised them a lot because they didn't know that my stepmom could be that nice. My closest friend Evelyn promised to visit me by the weekend to have a feel of what our home looks like presently. When I got home on Friday, I told my stepmom about Evelyn's visit. She was very happy to hear that Evelyn was visiting. She said she has a place to go on Saturday, but she will wait for Evelyn's arrival before she leaves. Evelyn arrived at our house as early as 9 a.m. She ate breakfast with us. After we ate breakfast, my father was the first to leave the house. He said he wants to visit his childhood friend Mr. Patrick. He said it's been a long time he saw Mr. Patrick. 15 minutes after he left the house, my stepmom left too. She told us to take very good care of ourselves. She said we should make sure the house is tidy before she returns. When she left, Evelyn and I went to my room while Phillips remained in the sitting room. Evelyn and I chatted for hours. We talked about school, careers, and many other things. At exactly 2 p.m., Evelyn told me she wanted to leave. She said she doesn't want her mom to start calling her cell phone number. I followed Evelyn to the gate. We hugged each other and we waved at each other. When I returned to the sitting room, Philip was still sitting there. I sat on the couch in the sitting room and we started chatting. Philip began to ask me about my friend. He asked me how I met Evelyn and I told him that she is my classmate and my closest friend in school. He asked me a lot of questions about Evelyn and I gave him answers according to what I know about her. The last question that Philip asked that made me realize that he had an interest in Evelyn was when he asked me whether Evelyn has a boyfriend. I said since I know Evelyn, I have never seen her with any man. I said we used to talk about men like girls do, but none of us has a girlfriend. He said what if she has and I don't know. I said Evelyn is my classmate and my closest friend in school. I said there is nothing that Evelyn will do that I won't know about. I said if she has a boyfriend, I will be the first person to know. After I answered him, I asked him why he asked me all those questions about Evelyn. He said it seems he likes her. I asked him if it seems he likes her or he likes her. He said he likes her. He said he wants me to help him talk to Evelyn since we are friends. He said Evelyn will listen to me better than him. I said I will do my best. He promised to buy me a very nice gift if I talk to Evelyn on his behalf. He asked me what I want as a gift. I said I want iPhone 12. He said if I am available to convince Evelyn to date him, he would buy me iPhone 12. As soon as I heard that, I started thinking of the strategy that I will use to win Evelyn's heart for Philip. I didn't want that iPhone 12 to pass me by. The next day in school, I took Evelyn to the school's restaurant during the break. I bought her chicken and wine. After she finished eating the chicken and wine, I told her that I have something important to tell her. Evelyn said she knew something was fishy when I bought an expensive chicken and wine for her. She asked me what I wanted to tell her that made me spend an expensive amount on buying chicken for her. I said I want to tell her about my stepbrother Philip. She asked me what happened to Philip. I said since the day she came to our house, Philip has not allowed me to rest. I said Philip has been disturbing that he likes her and he wants to date her. As soon as Evelyn heard that, she busted into laughter. She said she laughed because Philip saw her that day and he didn't tell her anything. She said if he loves her as she claims, he should have been the one to approach her. I told Evelyn that Philip that I know is very. I said he doesn't have the charisma to talk to a girl. I said that doesn't mean he is weak. He is just like that. I said to Evelyn that she cannot find anyone better than Philip. I said he is the best she can find anywhere. I reminded Evelyn about the role that Philip played in reuniting our family. Everything I was doing was because of iPhone 12. Evelyn said she has heard what I said. She said she will take her time and decide on what to do. She said she will get back to me with her final decision. I told her that I will be waiting to hear from her. While we were going home on Friday, Evelyn said she will come to our house the next day so that she can see Philip for herself. She said if she sees him, maybe he will be able to talk to her himself. When I got home, I met Philip in the sitting room as usual. I told him that I have talked to Evelyn and she has decided to visit us the next day. I said he should do everything to convince her. I told him that I have done the difficult part of the job. I said what is left is just for him to add to what I have done. I told him that the main thing Evelyn wants is to hear it directly from him. I said if he tells her himself, she will accept immediately. Philip thanked me. He said he will do his best to convince her when she comes to. While I was walking into my room, I kept remembering Philip about his promise. Philip said if Evelyn agrees to date him when she comes tomorrow, I will get my iPhone 12 by Monday. Evelyn came to our house at exactly 11 a.m. on Saturday. When she entered the sitting room, I deliberately excused myself from the sitting room so that I can leave her with Philip. I went into my room and hid behind the door so that I can hear their conversation. 5 minutes after I left, Philip and Evelyn were looking at each other without saying anything. The anger that was in me from where I was watching them couldn't be quantified. After some time, Philip began to initiate a conversation with Evelyn. He started by asking Evelyn about her academics. Evelyn answered him well. Next, he moved to what Evelyn likes and what she dislikes. Evelyn said she likes reading and traveling. Philip said he also likes reading, but he doesn't like traveling. He said he is always afraid of an airplane. Philip moved closer to Evelyn and began the main conversation. He asked Evelyn if I have talked to her about anything. Evelyn told him that we are friends, so we talk about a lot of things. Philip said what he was trying to ask her was whether I have talked to her about him. Evelyn said I have talked to her about him, but she wants to hear it from him. Philip said if she wants to hear it from him directly, then he will say it. He told Evelyn that she captured his heart since the first day he saw her. He said he has seen a lot of girls, but she is so special. He said she is better than all the girls he has been seeing. Evelyn smiled. She said that is how a lot of guys do when they want a woman. She said if they get what they want, they will change their attitude. They would forget about all the promises they made when they were wooing the girl. Philip said he is not like that. He said he is ready to stand by his words till the end of time. He told Evelyn that he loves her and he wants her to become the mother of his unborn children. I could not be more proud of Philip from where I hid. I was enjoying the way he was putting his sentences together. After going back and forth, Evelyn said she has heard what he said. She said she will look into what he said and she will give him a reply as soon as possible. A few minutes later, I came out from my where I hid pretending like I didn't hear everything they said. As soon as I entered the sitting room, they kept quiet as if they weren't talking before I came in. After a few minutes, Evelyn told me that she wanted to leave. I asked her why she was leaving so early. She said she has some laundry to do at home. She said she will also help her mom in the kitchen. When she walked out of the sitting room, I followed her immediately. I asked her whether Philip was able to talk to her. Evelyn said Philip told her what she wanted to hear. She said she was very impressed with the way he put his sentences together. She said she likes him. She said she wants to take her time before she gives him a reply. I quickly interjected when I heard that. I said she doesn't need to keep Philip waiting anymore since she claims she likes him. Evelyn left after we talked at the gate. I hurriedly walk into the sitting room so that I can talk to Philip too. As soon as I entered the room, I walked straight to Philip. I asked him how it went. I pretended like I didn't know what happened. Philip said he knows my friend would have told me what happened. I lied to him that I didn't ask her because she was in a hurry. Philip said he was able to express his feelings to her. He said he told her his mind and he hopes she will yield to his demand. Philip said Evelyn promised to get back to him as soon as possible. Before I left for school on Monday, I made up my mind that I will do everything to convince Evelyn so that she can quickly yield to Philip's demand. Since Philip told me about the iPhone 12, I have been dreaming of it. After the assembly, I quickly went to Evelyn's sit so that another person won't sit close to her. As soon as I sat, I started my motive. I told her to talk to Philip as soon as possible. I said she should possibly give him a reply today. Evelyn wanted to know why I was trying to rush her. I said Philip is a good guy and he deserves the best. Evelyn said she will come to our house during the weekend. She said she wants to tell him herself. I was so happy when I heard that. When I got home, I told Philip that Evelyn has agreed to date him. I said she would have called him to inform him, but she doesn't have a cell phone. I told him that Evelyn promised to come during the weekend so that she can inform him herself. Philip said if Evelyn comes on Saturday and says what he wants to hear, I will get my iPhone 12 on Sunday. As soon as I heard that, I started dreaming of Saturday. I would have moved that Monday become Saturday if I had supernatural power. As the days were going by, I was just anticipating Saturday. Finally, the day I was waiting for arrived. Evelyn called me at exactly 9 a.m. that she was on her way. When Evelyn arrived at our house, she met a full house because my parents were still at home. A few minutes later, My dad left for work because he had an emergency. 1 hour later, my mom told me to follow her to the mall to get some stuff. We all left the house, leaving Philip and Evelyn. When we left, Evelyn told Philip what he wanted to hear. After telling him, they had explosive sex. When we returned home, we met them in the sitting room watching television as if nothing happened. 1 hour after my mom and I returned from the mall, Evelyn told me she was leaving. When I followed her to the gate, she told me that she has told Philip that they can start dating. When I returned to the sitting room, I started whispering to Philip about my iPhone 12. At exactly noon on Sunday, I heard a knock on my door. When I opened the door to see who was at the door, I met Philip standing in front of my door with an iPhone 12. I screamed very loud when I saw my new phone. As soon as I collected it, I took it to my stepmom and my dad. They were so happy for me. I didn't know that Philip bought 2 phones until the next day when I was going to school. As soon as I walked out of the gate, Philip called me back. When I went to him, he gave me another iPhone 12. He said I should give it to Evelyn. I became speechless. I was just looking at Philip without saying anything. I was wondering how happy Evelyn will be when she sees her new phone. When I got to school, I told Evelyn that I have a big surprise for her. She wanted to know what the surprise was, but I wasn't ready to tell her immediately. I told her to guess what the surprise might be. She did all the guessing, but she didn't even come close. After some minutes, I brought out my iPhone 12 from my bag. Evelyn became speechless. She didn't see me with an iPhone when she came to our house on Saturday, so she was wondering how I got an iPhone between Sunday and Monday morning. I told her that it was Philip's that gave me the iPhone 12. She was speechless. She said she didn't know that Philip is that generous. I told Evelyn that the surprise I am talking about is not my iPhone 12. After some minutes, I brought out her iPhone 12 from my bag. Evelyn was shocked when she saw me with another iPhone 12. I said this one is the real surprise. I handed the phone over to her and I told her it's a gift from Philip. Evelyn was speechless. She was wondering how she could get a big gift from someone she just started dating a few days ago. We took pictures with our phones. I snapped Evelyn with her phone while she snapped me with my phone. Evelyn and I enjoyed using our phones. We use it most times in school. Most times, some of our friends used to come to us to borrow our phones to snap pictures. Because of that, a lot of pictures were stored on our phones. I was with Evelyn one day when she told me about what happened between her and Philip on the day she came to our house. She told me how she and Philip had sex. She told me how good Philip was in bed. When I got home that day, I wanted to ask Philip, but I cautioned myself. Since then, I have been looking for a way to have a taste of Philip. I wanted to experience what Evelyn experienced. My urge for sex with Philip led me to download porn videos on my phone. I started watching 18+ videos uncontrollably. The next Saturday, my dad and my stepmom attended a wedding ceremony, leaving only Philip at home. Because I was bored in my room, I came to the sitting room to watch television. I did not enjoy the programs on display. Therefore, I connected my phone to the speaker. The videos on my phone were playing one after the other. The speaker's sound was at max. Therefore, Philip heard what was going on in the sitting room. A few minutes later, I left the sitting room to take my bath while the videos were still playing. As soon as I started bathing, I heard the porn video on my phone playing in the sitting room. I had soapy water all over my body, so I couldn't rush out. I hurriedly took my bath and rushed out to stop the video that was playing. When I got to the sitting room, I met Philip. I couldn't say anything. He looked at me surprisingly. Philip was wearing short trousers, so I could see his anaconda. As soon as I saw Philip's anaconda, I remembered what Evelyn told me. I knew it was my time to enjoy what Evelyn enjoyed. I moved closer to Philip and I grabbed his anaconda. Philip didn't resist. You could tell that it was what Philip has been dreaming of. We kissed and romanced each other right there in the sitting room. After 20 minutes of romancing, we went to my room and had proper sex. The sex was explosive. I saw what Evelyn told me myself. After that day, Philip and I continued to have sex until we both got married. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or if this is what I should do, or please let me have your thoughts on this.
This story takes place in the heart of France, Paris. Paris is one of the most romantic places ever to exist. They call it the city of love. Is it really, though? I am Iris, and this month I'll be turning 18-year-old. I was born, and I have lived all my life in Paris. When talking about Paris, the thing that comes to our mind is Eiffel Tower, streets crowded with tourists, beautiful little coffee shops, and the list goes on. However, what people don't know is that one of Paris's best-kept secrets is the countryside. That's where I live. It's a tiny piece of heaven tucked away in the 20th arrondissement of Paris known as La Campagne à Paris. I love where I live. The views are straight from a movie. Each building is unique and quirky with gentle pastel colors and paved, cobbled paths. It's nothing like the rest of Paris. In a good way. Life is easy here. My school is only some blocks away from my house. My friends' houses are near too. But the most awkward thing about where I live is that my neighbor is my ex-boyfriend. His name is Louis. Louis was great in everything that a girl could ask for. A great smile, tall, respectful. But he was too good. When I see that the person I'm dating is way too much into me, I tend to stand back. We never argued, and there was never drama. And this kind of makes me get bored of it. I want my relationship to be exciting, with ups and downs, as it should be. I want someone to disagree with me, not just agree with everything I say, like they don't have an opinion on their own. However, I don't know if I can call him my ex-boyfriend because it was more like just a summer fling. We dated the whole of last summer. I get a feeling that he is still not over me. But what can I do? I get bored so easily. And it's actually a serious problem. Do you know that feeling when you are in summer and feel so vulnerable? You feel like you are free to do anything. A new hair color, a new tattoo, a new piercing. Sometimes even a new boyfriend. Ugh, I miss summer right now. Winters can be so depressive. And I can't even wear what I want to wear. I love wearing crop tops and letting my stomach out a little bit. This is the last year of high school. Next year, God knows where I'll be because I still don't even know what I want to study in college. However, I am excited for this year. We have prom, and also I have to pass my driving license. I hope Louis doesn't ask me to be his prom date because that would be awkward. I don't know about the country you live in, but prom is usually the night for couples to lose their virginities here. I wouldn't wait for prom night, but I still haven't found someone special yet. Call me old-fashioned, but I don't want to lose my virginity with someone like Louis. For example, I aspire to have some deep-level connections with someone. Every day is the same day at our school. It's like déjà vu. All over again. But, one day, one random Thursday, a new boy came into my class. He walked and then sat without even starting at anyone. He was tall, dark-skinned, curly hair. The teacher made him introduce himself. Apparently, his name is Aaron. During the lunch break, all the girls were all over him. I knew this would happen. But, I am not this kind of girl. I like to look uninterested. That's my secret to making someone interested in me. Days went by, and we didn't even talk. But, I could notice some stares here and there. I saw how he was talking to the other girls. And I could tell that he wasn't just like any other guy. He was mysterious until one day, Aaron decided to come out of his shell and actually talk to me. He goes, "Where can I eat something good around here?" I told him about my favorite place where I get food every day. He said, "Wanna ditch the classes and go eat something?" How could I say no? I wanted to know about this guy. He said to meet outside. I went outside of school. And here he was, waiting for me. Smiling. We started walking and talking. There was a vibe already. We go into the store and sit on the corner by the window. Then he orders for me without even asking what I'd want. He said, "Trust me." That was attractive. We talked about our favorite movies, our first kisses and so on. I didn't notice how many hours had passed until my mother called me. We decided to leave. He put his hand around my waist and whispered in my ear, "See ya." My walk home had me questioning myself. Why didn't he ask for my number? Guys usually ask for my number immediately. Maybe he truly was different from the other guys. It had been days since our little date. And we didn't even share a word at school. I was avoiding him in the hallway at this point. Then, someone texted me. A text said, "Same spot. At 2 p.m. Was that Aaron? Well, yeah, for sure. I was in a dilemma about going or not. I decided to go there. He was sitting on the same spot as that day. I went inside, and he gave me a little kiss on the cheek. It got me off guard. He had already ordered for me again. This time, he asked if I had a boyfriend. And I said no. I didn't ask him. And he said, "Don't you want to know if I have a girlfriend?" I said, "Do you?" He said not yet and started smiling. Aaron said, "You're gonna go to prom with me?" And started smiling. I didn't say anything. I just laughed it off, trying to play it cool. He was staying a little bit too near me. I could smell his perfume, and I could feel the warmth of his breath as he was talking to me. At this point, I just wanted him to kiss me. But he didn't. That's how our second date ended. As I was walking home, I saw Louis, the ex. He said that he wanted to talk to me, and I said sure. He started holding my hand, asking me to go to prom with him. I said no and told him that I'd made plans with someone else. He seemed angry and wanted to know who the guy was. Why would you care? I said. He said that he wanted to know so he could fight the guy. I immediately started laughing, but he seemed to be talking seriously. Knowing that Louis probably still loves me, I was worried. I was worried about what would happen. I didn't want anything to affect my relationship with Aaron. We had a good start. It was almost prom night, and everyone was starting to freak out. I still didn't have any idea of what I was gonna wear. As I talked with my girls about some dresses, I got a text. Aaron had texted me saying, "Meet me after school." So, that's what I did. We met. He said that today we're going to find our prom outfits. At first, I was like no. But then he got me into it. We went to a couple of stores. And nothing. It was my time to try for some dresses. He was the one picking the dresses for me. Every time I went out from the wardrobe with a dress, Aaron had this look on his face. It was clear that he liked me. There was a lot of tension between us. We both could feel it. Then, I came across a black dress with an open leg. I tried it, and I loved it. It was time to show it to Aaron. You should have seen his face. He was speechless. He came near me and said, "This is the one," and kissed me. I think my cheeks got red for a second. Then, it was his turn to try for a suit. Every time he was trying suits, he would come out shirtless. He was showing off. But I loved it. We got our clothes, and I could say that it was one of the best dates I've ever been with. The day of the prom came, and here I was, getting ready. Aaron was waiting outside my house. But then he came inside because he wanted to say hi to my parents. He was looking so good. I just wanted to kiss him, but I couldn't in front of my parents. The moment we got in the car, we gave each other a little kiss. We arrived at prom, and everyone was looking at us. I heard that Louis couldn't find a date. I saw him. He was standing in a corner alone. I felt bad for a second. Hours went by, and Aaron and I were having the best time. Aaron is so easy to stay with. As we were slow dancing, I saw Louis coming at us. He pushed Aaron to the ground. Aaron seemed confused. He didn't know who Louis was. He heard me saying, "Louis, stop." Aaron said, "You know this fool," and then he punched him in the face. The security got us out, and I was shaking. I told him who Louis was, but he didn't seem to care. He was just worried if I was okay. So, basically, Louis got so jealous he decided to do this. But he didn't ruin our prom night. Things just got better from there. I realized how mature Aaron is and that I could love him. We weren't allowed to get back at prom. So we got to the car. Aaron said, "I got an idea. Let's get to my place." He said that he was home alone. It was too early to end this night. So we went to his home. We stayed in our prom outfits and decided to watch a movie. He was touching my hair and kissing my forehead. We both fell asleep in that way. We got up at the sound of my mother calling me. So, he drove me home. As I was walking to the door of my house, I saw Louis there. He was talking to my parents. What could he be saying? Sorry for last night. He better be. I got closer, and I noticed that my parents were angry. My mother said to me, "Get in the house," as Louis ran to his home. Apparently, Louis told my parents that I spent my night at a guy's house. How could he know? He probably stalked us. He is a psycho. I had no other solution than to tell my parents the truth. If I told them that I didn't do anything bad, they still wouldn't believe me. They said to me, "You're grounded." They took my phone and said that I wasn't allowed to go out before and after school. How could I keep in touch with Aaron? I was so mad at Louis. I bagged the door and fell asleep. The next day came. It felt like forever. I was excited to meet with Aaron. We meet up, and I tell him everything that has happened. He said that he wanted to fight Louis, but I begged him not to. Aaron said that it's for the best if he goes and talks with my parents. He insisted. I said, all right, why not? I told my mother that Aaron wanted to talk to them, and she asked me to call him for dinner at our house. So, that is what we did. My parents seemed to love him. Well, who couldn't love him? We had so much fun. My mother said that it's okay if I sleep over at Aaron's since his parents are working at night. I was surprised she let me, but I guess they noticed what kind of a guy Aaron is. So, we went to his house. We both could sense that we felt a little nervous, like something would happen. We started kissing, and then he went, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I kissed him instead of an answer. Things led to another, and we did it. We were closer than never now. I felt safe. We said our first, I love yous. I love the fact that he was the first one that said it. Even though we are in our teenage years, I know for sure that love will always be between us two. We are excited to see what life brings ahead of us. There's nothing better than being free, young, and in love.
My mom forgets things. Hi guys. My name is Jane. I am the first child of my parents, who had 2 more girls. I was loved the same way my sisters were loved. And you won't even know that the man I called my dad is not my biological father. Yes, he isn't. I am more beautiful than my sisters, and that people usually had a hard time believing that we were siblings. Only those who knew my history would agree. My mom and dad were 2 young couples who were deeply in love and preparing for marriage. They just couldn't keep their hands off each other. You could not find one without the other. Everyone who knew my father would always tease him because it seemed like my mom had him wrapped around her fingers. I was told that my dad never saw any day as a great day until he spoke with my mom over the phone. He began his day with her, and he ended it with her. My mom was not different at all. It was clear she had given her heart to someone. Suitors who were always coming for her hand in marriage could now see that it was a lost cause because my mother would not give up the man she had ever truly loved for another guy. Everything seemed perfect. Although some elderly folks said that the feelings would not always be there. Everyone admired their love. Some claimed that it would die within the first few years after marriage, and it was only a matter of time before the flame that they felt burning all over them would be put out. My parents cared less about what people had to say concerning them. They were in love, and that was all that mattered. They were convinced that they were meant for each other. They could not wait to get officially recognized as man and wife. My dad knew that although Mom loved him, he would only be relaxed when they were married formally because then he could hold her as a trophy in front of every other man in town who was equally interested in my mom. He wanted them to see she was all his. My mom equally knew that getting married to my father meant that she had a right to tell other ladies to stay away from her territory. And so when Dad proposed to her, she readily accepted. If there was someone Dad wanted far away from Mom, it was Julius. Mom was from an average family, the only child of parents who were high school teachers and understood the value of education. They tried instilling moral values into a mom from an early stage. Having a beautiful daughter meant that everyone would want to take advantage of her. This was common. Boys would go after girls just to sleep with them, and when they did, the story got around very quickly. Some girls usually get pregnant, so it was considered a normal situation if you found a girl of 14 years old pregnant with a child. The community was bad, but my mom's parents had no option of relocating since the school where they taught was right in the community. And they were not rich, so they had to do all in their power to raise my mom. They knew trouble lurked around every corner in the streets, especially when you had someone like Julius around. Julius was an irresponsible boy. He was irresponsible in every sense of the word. He came from a family who was known to be the perpetrators of most of the crimes in the community. Julius had irresponsible parents, but he soon overtook them in the race towards being wayward. He detested school. He had no brain for books. It was a sigh of relief when he was finally made to stop school because he had been a thorn in the flesh of the teachers and the school authorities. He fought with everyone, friends, foes, students, and teachers. On one occasion, he had threatened the principal of the school. My mom's parents were his teachers at once, and they did not need anyone to tell them about Julius. They just ignored him like he never existed, And it was to their advantage because they had watched him beat up a making teacher twice his size who wanted to punish him for coming late to class. When his parents were summoned for the 5th time by the school authorities concerning their son's attitude, they started a fight with the teachers there. And Julius joined them in the fight. The school authorities reported the issue to the police department, and that was when Julius was finally kicked out of the school. Julius then made a gang out of the boys living on the street who didn't attend school. He then grew worse. Out of the suitors who came for Mom, Julius was one who she had a hard time turning off. Julius just made it plain that he only wanted to sleep with her. And even though he had gotten about 3 girls pregnant, he didn't seem to care. He only wanted to sleep with Mom so that he could brag about his latest achievements all around the community. He wanted to be the first person who slept with Mom. He kept on making advances towards Mom, which she constantly rejected. When it was noised that Mom was engaged, Julius became furious. He was going to miss all he had been trying hard to get, and worse still was the fact that he was losing it to that. Julius had known Dad since childhood. Daddy was the direct opposite of all that Julius stood for. My grandparents taught them in the same class, and my grandparents loved my dad. They constantly used him as a point of reference to other kids. While growing up, Julius could mess with other kids and get away with it, but he couldn't try such a thing with Dad. On various occasions, Dad had given him a series of beatings, a memory he carried all through his life. And now once again, Dad was about inflicting pain on him by depriving him of his target. I once heard the story of how my father dealt with Julius while they were in their teens. My father has always hated injustice. He was often found defending the weak and defenseless. Julius was fond of bullying everyone, and no one had ever stood up to him until my dad moved into the community. He attended the same school, and was in the same class. My dad is quiet, but that shouldn't fool you. He had a lion in him. On his very first day in school, he saw Julius take the lunch of a poor girl. Since it was his first day in school, and he had no friends yet, he kept looking and trying to see the outcome of the whole situation. After Julius made away with the girl's food, she began crying, but when the teacher came and asked her what happened, she refused to tell him. And that was because she had been warned by Julius not to. Otherwise, she would face more severe pain. Everyone was afraid of Julius. On that day, before school was over, Julius walked up to Dad and told him to always respect him just like everyone else did. My father kept silent. The next day, Julius walked up to my dad and demanded that the content of my dad's lunchbox be given to him. Dad kept silent and continued eating his food. Everyone watched as they feared that Dad was soon going to be beaten up. Julius was furious when my dad continued to eat without even saying a word, so he threw away my dad's food on the floor. My father charged at him just like a mad bull. In a split second, Julius eased on the floor, and my father was on him, feeding him blows. Everyone started hailing my father. It took a while before the teachers intervened finally came around, but it was already too late. Julius had already lost some teeth but retained 2 swollen eyes. They were taken to the principal's office to narrate their account of the story, and that was when everyone in the class spoke up about how notorious Julius had been. Julius was immediately punished and suspended for 2 weeks. And as soon as my father got back into the class, everyone came around him. When Julius returned from suspension, he avoided my dad, and if he wanted to bully someone who knew my dad, he immediately left the fellow. That was how the rivalry and enmity between Julius and my father began. On one occasion, when Dad and Mom were coming from my grandparents' place, they met Julius and his gang. By the way, it was then that Julius got humiliated the most. Dad made it clear to him that he had lost the battle and would never in his life get an opportunity of sleeping with his soon-to-be wife. Mom raised her finger, which showed her engagement ring, and she and Dad turned and walked away laughing. Julius was furious. He was not going to let this one go by just like that. He made a plan, one that would ensure he repaid both Mom and Dad. Their wedding date was fixed, and everything was moving smoothly. However, 2 weeks before their wedding, Mom was raped by a group of armed robbers who invaded her parents' home. Julius arranged a gang to go and rob my mom and her parents. They went with guns and knives and immediately broke down the entrance door. They collected the few cash they could find, and while the gang members were about to leave, Julius said he came to collect something more than cash. He wanted to have a taste of Mom. His gang members tried changing his mind about raping Mom, but he refused, and they couldn't compel him as he was their leader. After he had his way with her, he laughed and said that the pig could have the leftover. That statement gave him away. This tragedy was too much to bear. My mom's parents wanted my mom to conceal the information from her lover so that the wedding would not be called off. But my mom, who was already traumatized by the experience, was not ready to build a home on the foundation of deception, and however, the news will eventually spread. And so she made up her mind to tell my dad about it. And she did. It was not an easy pill for my father to swallow, but he did. He was ready to get married to my mom. He covered up her shame by not informing his parents about what had happened. He assured my mother that his love was stronger than ever, and together, they would pass through this phase successfully. This made my mother's parents love my dad more. My mother found it difficult to become intimate with my dad during the wedding night. Her wound was more profound than they all thought. My dad was very understanding. He did not want to force himself on her. He was willing to help her get through this phase of her life, so they agreed that she would go for counseling. They would both see a therapist. A bigger blow soon struck when it was discovered just a week into the marriage that my mother was pregnant as a result of the assault. They were both distraught. My mother cried her eyes out. This was too painful. She began thinking about aborting the child, but my dad intervened. He was equally hurt, but he did not let it affect his sense of reasoning. He was still going to protect my mom from the world. He made a vow, and he was going to keep it. He promised my mother that he would love the child as though it were his very own, and that is what he has consistently done. It was very easy to detect who was responsible. An arrest warrant was made for Julius, but he fled the scene for a while. Some of his gang members were rounded up, while the rest went with him. He began living the life of a fugitive, going from one town or community to the other. But in each place where he went, he found it difficult laying low, as he often went on a robbery spree just to survive. Before long, he became wanted in several states of the country, and a huge amount of cash reward awaited anyone who would bring the information that would lead to his arrest. It was not long before the law caught up with him. During his trial in court, Julius admitted to the crimes levied against him, and he was sentenced to life in prison. However, while he was being led away, some group of armed individuals attacked the court and killed the judge and 6 officers. Julius escaped and disappeared from off the scene. 3 months after I was born, my grandparents started getting death threats from an anonymous fellow who claimed they would pay for almost taking his life away. It was clear who this individual was. It was Julius. My grandparents were witnesses during his trial, and so when he escaped, he vowed to make them pay. He made several attempts to kidnap me when I was a few months old just to cause my parents pain. My parents then decided that it would be best if my grandparents relocated to a different city. That's why they would be safe from danger. However, today, when do you suppose to travel? Julius and his parents attacked them on the way with guns and ammunition, but they were soon disappointed as a heavy military presence was stationed around specific areas where it was suspected that they would attack. They were a massive shootout, and Julius' parents were killed alongside the gang members. Julius was the only survivor, who once again escaped, but this time around, he was coming for my parents. He knew that he had lost everything, and he was willing to kill every one of us and then commit suicide. His luck equally ran out as police officers were stationed at our home. He opened fire when he arrived but was easily subdued. He was taken into custody. On the final day of his trial, law enforcement agents who were heavily armed were placed everywhere just to make sure there was no way Julius could escape. Investigations showed that it was Julius's patents that masterminded his previous escape. Julius was sentenced to death by hanging this time around. While 2 policemen were led away, one of them got so careless and exposed his weapon, and Julius went for it. He made to shoot my parents before he was eventually shot by an officer. It was a day of relief for individuals, families, communities, states, and the country at large. People could now sleep with both eyes closed. Although my dad was determined to cover up my mother's shame, news of the incident got out, and she was so traumatized to the point that she found it challenging to keep up with things. She easily forgot things. She was always lost in thought. She forgot things almost as soon as she said them. She seemed to always drift apart. This was something I witnessed while growing up. She would often get lost in her thoughts while cooking, that it was not abnormal to see her burn her food at least 3 times a week. There was a time when she drove down to the mall to pick up some items, but she boarded a cab back home. When Dad asked her if the car had broken down, she remembered she had driven herself to the mall. This was a regular occurrence. She would request something and reject it as soon as it came. It was no use getting into an argument with her because she was always right. My dad was patient all through the years. He had helped turn Mom's mess into a powerful message, and they both found themselves counseling young couples who were going through a marital crisis. They often organized classes for these couples at home where they would encourage the couples by telling their own story. This class was tagged Sex, Love, and Goop and aired on Netflix. They were a source of encouragement to these young couples who soon started testifying about how the story of my parents helped them. We, the kids, were never allowed to come close to the area where this meeting was held. But I always found a way to eavesdrop. One couple, in particular, caught my attention. I listened to the lady as she and her husband shared their story. With tears of gratitude to my parents, the lady introduced herself as Miranda. And everyone listened as she talked. I remember that she said to everyone, "Good day. My name is Miranda." As hard as I tried, I never was the little girl that had dreams about her wedding. I just wanted the major stakeholders to be happy for the most part. Let everyone enjoy themselves and have money after the wedding. Therefore, when the situation arose that warranted a privately intimate wedding, it wasn't much of a bother to adjust because the picture of happiness I had did not warrant anything happening. However, as much as I never thought of any preconceived ideas of what my wedding would look like, I knew what it wasn't going to look like. And for the life of me, it was not that my husband and I would have a major issue with consummating our marriage for months. The issue is called vaginismus, and no, I'm not ashamed of it. So please don't help me to be ashamed of what I'm not ashamed of. Vaginismus is more of a mental condition than it is a physical one. So, imagine my surprise when the honeymoon I had pictured was laden with pain, tears, and fatigue. Oh, I cried so hard, because we had fought to get to where we were. People were congratulating us, and we were grateful. But what was this? The pain, excruciating, raised to a power of 1,000. I was in pain, intense, serious, and body-shaking pain. My husband hurt from watching me writhe in pain. What was a lubricant? What didn't we try? A few weeks after, nothing had happened, and I was very tired of hearing "just close your eyes. You're imagining the pain. It's not that hard." I went to a gynecologist at a hospital. On the 26th of January, exactly 1 month after our wedding, I decided to seek medical help. I drove myself to the hospital outside the city. This was my first ever gynecologist visit. I explained to a general physician first, and then I was referred to the CMD of the hospital. I remember walking in head down in shame as if I brought it upon myself. That part does not work again, though. I sat in front of this thick man with no name card or plaque in sight, not on his door, table, or overall. I should have walked away. But I did not because I did not even know what to expect. I explained everything to him in between tears. I felt I could not do anything, no matter how much my husband encouraged me. "How long did you people date for?" he asked, almost eyeing me. 2 years and 8 months, I answered. "So, you people dated for close to 3 years, and you didn't have sex?" Now he was irritated. "No, we didn't." I was smiling, trying to change the topic. "So the rest of us are sinners. Look at it now, 3 years, no sex." His words felt like a dagger in my heart because, at the time, I was already asking God why he asked that we remain sexually pure if the process of deflowering was this painful. This man asked me almost 5 times if I was sure I was a virgin. I answered that I was, except for the sexual abuse that happened when I was a child, which would have sponsored that reality. He went ahead to minimize everything I said, and then asked me to lay on the examination table. After checking the first time, the guy said there's a seal that can easily be removed with his fingers. Brethren, those were the worst 3 minutes of my life. I fell from the table as I ran from this pain. The pain was about to numb my ears and my feet. I screamed, but it came out as muffled groans because tears poured too much. The matron he had sent for had to shout at him to stop. I couldn't drive home after that incident. I had to call my husband to come to get me. Tears didn't stop for almost an hour. I kept crying and crying. At that point, I vowed to encourage premarital sex. As we drove home from that silly doctor, I was very quiet. The tears did not stop. At this time, I wasn't trying to cry. My body just was exhaling. My body knew it had been violated. My husband would have gone to bring the place down, but the issue at hand was more serious to me than getting the idiot to pay. He had told us to try that night, but we could not. We could not even try that week. I bled for about 2 days too. At this point, I was sure that I was going to be an ambassador for premarital sex. God had deceived me. I was going to get him back. Then I called my auntie. She's a top consultant in the country, and long story short, we were in Illinois. University College Hospital. The next week, the professor we saw, oh, what an amazing man, he cried with me. consoled me, and encouraged me when it was time to examine me when I hesitated a couple of times. I started crying on the examination table without anyone touching me. After examination, he prescribed lidocaine and said we should try, but the surgery would be carried out if nothing happened. Thursday that week, I was in UCH for surgery. I was completely put under. I didn't even know when I slept off. They called it digital dilation. My husband was a rock, complete support. My mum could hardly sleep or breathe. Oh, I don't want to go into my mum's reaction. It's too much. The woman was broken. Anyway, after spending the little we spent, and the time, my body was knocked out for 2 weeks after that surgery. I was dizzy for 2 weeks nonstop. The surgery did not work. At this point, I lay on the bed and asked God what I had done to deserve this pain. If it was just difficult, it would have been different. The pain was completely beyond me. It would reverberate underneath my feet, almost numb my ears. It wasn't acute pain or a bearable pain. The professor had told us that if the surgery did not work, we were to return for a procedure where I'd be numbed waist down, and then we try given professionals. Chris swore that it would never be him or his wife, so that was a no-go area. When we returned to our base, we both decided to leave it. We were tired. As in, I was exhausted, and we were barely 2 months into the marriage. What was worse, I hadn't even asked God anything. We did everything we had done until that point with our logical calculation. I didn't even consider God. I didn't ask if it was His will. I became desperate and ran to help God. I didn't realize what I'd done until He and I had a conversation, and He chided me gently. I cried. Auntie D and the professor kept calling to find out our progress, and I had to gently tell her to leave it be. My mental health had taken such a hit that I could not even have anyone constantly checking on us. My husband and I decided to enjoy each other. Ladies and gentlemen, penetrative sex is not the only sex in the world. It's not. So, rest very well. I never have and will never support masturbation, but your husband can familiarize himself with you. Hiding can't work. Open up and let the exploration begin. We needed to unlearn the expectation that penetrative sex was the ultimate goal. It is not. Sexual satisfaction is. Find what works for you and do it well. Then came a program called Sex, Love and Goop on Netflix. That was the first time that we encountered this class. We did not agree on many things within that documentary, but our breakthrough came through a procedure on the show. Calculated breathing. I realized that what my body was doing was natural. It prevented me from an antibody, and the reflex action was to close up. When I consciously take calculated breaths before we begin, I allow my body to relax. I also started to have conversations with my mind. This is good for me. This is good for us. He is one of us now. In, out, in again, out again. Slight pain, in, out, deeper, in, out. Like that, we won. Whoosh. God, the first time, it still hurt, but it was bearable. The second time, the pain was more sustainable. And like that, Jesus got the victory. This class has been beneficial to my husband and me. It helped put an end to our misery. By the time Miranda was done with her story, people were emotionally moved. They all applauded Miranda's husband, who stood solidly by her and refused to cheat on his wife. However, my parents knew that specific individuals may question the authenticity of Miranda's experience. And so my mom spoke up. She started by noting that it was not fiction. Medical records back up Miranda's and her husband's claim. My parents made the other couples there understand that there's always a reason behind every problem in marriages. Nothing just happens. They said that there's a reason or cause why people are sex addicts. And there is a reason behind the scene when you see that a lady suffers from vaginismus. They equally paid that when you are married but never satisfied with your partner no matter how she dedicates time for your we time. There's a reason for it. I was listening with rapt attention as they said that when a man, woman does not fancy or believe, have an interest in sex, there's a reason for it. Finally, Dad rounded up the session by saying that a lot of people have passed through one trauma or another in their early lives, that the results are one of the things we see manifesting in marriages nowadays. But it depends on what you do with those things before we say I do or even after you get into the institution called marriage. He said that he and his mom will always advocate for therapy, counseling while dating because of those negative things one might have encountered while growing. From childhood abuse, trauma, and all those to just basically having a different background while growing up. If one is not intentional about who to marry by taking therapy, counseling seriously, it will be a struggle. He quipped that while there are lots of lessons that could be drawn from the story of this couple, He would always recommend that people do their homework before taking this journey of life called marriage. This would go a long way to tackling most issues that could arise. I listened with pride. I was proud of the man that I grew up to know as my father. Although he treated me like a daughter and never for once made me feel inferior to his other children, there have been times when I wished that I had his blood flowing through my veins. I felt ashamed knowing that I had the DNA of a man who would go down in the history of the nation as one of the most terrible men who ever lived. There is nothing that I wouldn't give to change my history. I usually found myself thinking about how my life would have been, how I would have turned out to be if Julius succeeded in stealing me as a child when he wanted to. Would I be this refined young lady that I am today? Or would I equally end up as a criminal who was wanted in various parts of the country? Anyways, I was glad that things just turned out the way they did. The door suddenly opened, and here was Mom looking at me. I was eavesdropping all along, and I knew I was going to get punished. However, I used her situation to my advantage. I told her that I heard her call for me. She wasn't sure if she did, so she let me go. She probably thought that she did but forgot she did. Hey guys, what would you do if you were me and you had a mom who forgets stuff every 5 minutes after she says them? I would love to hear your thoughts.
I am 17 and I hate people asking me if I am a virgin. Hi, I am Phil. I am just 17 and I had been staying with my cousin Luke for some weeks now. Before now, I had never met Luke in person. I have only had a couple of virtual chats with me. Before now, to be frank, I was only called upon to say hi on those encounters. Before now, he and my mum are so close, those two are something. Before now, I once thought, there is something fetish going on between those two. Before now, I haven't written that off yet. Before now, I don't trust my mum with men, and I am still yet to catch her with one. It is wrong of me to say my mum is cheating. On who exactly? She is a single mother. She has every reason to be dug by different kinds of men. Before now, she won't be breaking anyone's heart if she does that, but I am yet to see a man knock at the door except the mailman. Before now, it can't be him, he looked gay, and he is gay. On his visits, he looked at me instead of my mum. Before now, that man is something else. The mailman is a tall dark guy. Before now, he once told me he is a Belgian but came from a strong background of Congolese. Before now, my mum has black men's frames in her room but I doubt she was ever interested in one. Not even Mr. Christoph, our neighbor, and the only black man with the German accent I have ever seen in my whole life. His daughter, Anna, is not black. Before now, initially, I thought Mr. Christoph adopted Anna, but she is his actual daughter. Anna and I are quite close, but nothing intimate was going on between us. I am not comfortable with girls. I haven't approached one my whole life. Before now, everyone in our neighborhood knew I am a virgin. I guess that was why my mum asked Luke to come and pick me. We talked about this, but for the first time in like forever. My mum wanted her to wish to come to pass. I can recall Anna telling me that her grandfather met a South African lady on his expenditure to Africa. The end product of what happened between the two is her father. Before now, Mr. Christoph is a single parent just like my mum, but he had never knocked at us. Not for once. Before now, he is a busy person, which gave Anna the privilege to invite several classmates to her place. Especially the male gender. Her room is opposite mine, and I do watch on her from my window. Before now, I got a binocular for this purpose just to gaze and fantasize about her figure. To be candid, I love watching her make love with the other guys that came visiting. Before now, according to my research, the standard time for sexual intercourse is 15 minutes, but this girl came last more than an hour. Before now, once a guy is done, she gets another in. Sometimes age rocks 2, 3 guys at the same time. I guessed she found out, but she had never mentioned it. Before now, she never asked me to come to see her in her room too. Before now, she once told me, "You're the most real guy in my life." That doesn't sound like I am interested in you. She preferred the friendship, but I can't say I do. Due to watching her, I started jerking off. Before now, I imagined her and stroked my penile muscle. Before now, my commonest commodity was now toilet rolls. On the stall one day, the salesgirl was looking at me with a weird face because all I came to buy were toilet rolls. "They're my mum's," I said. She scoffed. Over time, I realized watching Anna do her thing is toxic to me. So I ceased looking at her, but I couldn't control the huge again. My head kept looking for holes to dig. Before now, I had now become an addict. Who will set me free from this? Before now, I didn't tell my mum about it, but she surely knows. She might not know how I got sensitized into doing it, but she knew how I started. Before now, if you also think it was Anna's shape and curves that caused it, you're also wrong. I can't say this is what he does for a living, but Luke knows how to get a party started. Before now, since we had been living together, we had grown to understand ourselves over the weeks. Before now, Luke isn't all bad, he is a good person to be with but not for me at this time. Before now, Luke has so many acquaintances but not a single friend. I wonder how he does that. Before now, he will always say, don't get too close to people. Once they're close they will get the edge over you. It still doesn't make any sense to me to date. Living with Luke at the beachside is an idea I can't tell if it is a good one or a bad one. Our relationship is kind of toxic to me but Mum said that is what I need for now. Before now, all my life, I had lived with my mum until now. She had never seen anything wrong with me staying with her until when I finished high school. You need to stay with a man to understand what men are built for before you finally go to college, she would say. Here I am, living my mum's dream for me. Before now, I kind of like the idea now. I am the newest guy in town in the city of no shame. Before now, it is normal to go in public and hit a lady's buttocks cheeks, or even go ahead to squeeze them, without anyone bringing up harassment as a topic. Before now, the guys in this new environment don't have any other thing they do. All they look for is to hit their waist hard on some soft buttocks, and the ladies just want to ride the guys. Things seem balanced here. Everyone knows what the other person wants and they are ready to give it to each other. Before now, this is the only society where no one has any reason to rape. Before now, if a lady turns you down, another will give herself to you without you asking. Before it was difficult for me to adjust to how things work here. Before now, all my life before now, a guy had to approach a lady and so some talking and then she might give him what he wanted or not. That's normal. At least not all guys that talked to Anna ended up on her bed, but most did. That's for sure. But here, all you have to do is go straight to the point. If you are that good, you can get up to 5 ladies before the end of the day. Being a virgin is not a virtue here, to live in this community. You need to get laid. Before now, when I entered I was the only virgin I know of. Before now, not even Gina, the bartender's daughter. She's just 15 and she's pro in her league. If she hadn't handled me, I would not have believed myself. She is good with her mouth and her throat is so stretchable. Before now, she even swallows the whole thing and thank you for it. What a polite girl. After just a week of staying at the beachside with Luke, I had already forgotten about Anna. Don't blame me, you would have done the same too. Before now, I have so many girls to fantasize with. Before now, I am always hard all day, even while I sleep. I can't get my head off what I am seeing everywhere. Before now, nothing is hidden here, you can just look out from the window and start releasing. Before now, I don't have to stroke myself anymore. Here the imagination is real. While I was still with my mum, watching Anna wasn't enough for me anymore. Before now, I started visiting the web to watch videos. Before now, this made me jerk off so many times a day. Before now, my mum noticed but saw it as the norm and never made a fuss out of it. Before now, she didn't discourage the habit, neither did she encourage it. Before now, that had become my new hobby. She would enter my room, find me at the moment. And yet excuse me. Before now, I became so popular on one of those sites that they started sending videos to my emails. Instead of this to cure my urge, it increased it. I don't know the reason for that. It was me all the way. Before now, I love the opposite sex more than I love myself. I could recall vividly that as a small child I watched romantic movies with Mum and she always allowed me to cuddle her. Before now, she didn't see anything wrong with me watching those movies with her. I got fond of those types of movies, which I made sure are the only kind of movies we have at home. While my mates at school got intrigued by action, thriller, fictional and animated movies, all that got my attention was romantic movies. Before now, while still a small boy, I had started looking at the girls in such a tempting way. Before now, I see beyond their clothes while just looking at them. Maybe that's the reason I didn't do well in my academics. Before now, that was what led me to peep at Anna. The girl is innocent of my crimes, I am the culprit of my predicaments. At Luke's place, there is no television or internet. Before now, I cannot remember the last time I used Facebook. All he does is the club from the sunrise to the sunset. Before now, I didn't know Luke so much before now. My mum spoke highly of him on things that doesn't matter. Before now, sometimes I thought my mum had been having intimate affairs with his nephew. Before now, but this is not feasible either. Luke lives thousands of miles away and Mum never lives home. She is an artist and she had transformed the garage into her workshop. She only goes to the stores to buy groceries. Before now, the other place she visits that often is the art stores to buy her pieces of equipment. To be frank, she's good at what she does and her imagination is wild. Do you remember the frames of the black men painting in her room? Those were his drawing. People love her paintings and she had attracted so many customers for herself. Before now, she is talented, she deserves the credit. Before now, when I was younger I had also had an interest in artistry. Before now, I started drawing with crayons and color sticks. Before now, my mum will frame my little paintings. Funny enough, people bought them, not just young kids like me. But the elderly ones also find them attractive. Now, I am a good painter myself. Before now, I single-handedly made the designs at my high school since I had been in the 8th grade. Before now, I had participated in a few competitions myself and won some medals for myself. I have an online page where I use my creativity for money. Before now, my brain was doing things the right way before Anna stepped into the story. Before now, I am not proud of the day I met her. I left my goal and started chasing after fables. Is she to be blamed? Before now, no, it was all me and I hold myself responsible. I had learned graffiti, by the way. Before now, it is more fun painting on the walls with some color sprays. My mum did not buy this idea, since I had changed the whole wall to something else. Most teenagers stop by at our walls to take a few shots. Before now, but this time, my mum was not so proud of me. She said I had a child's imagination. Before now, according to her, paintings don't just depict the painter's imagination. It also describes the painter's mind. Before now, I wonder what my mind looks like. My mum is fond of speaking mysteries. Before now, her idioms looked as if they would make sense but made no sense eventually. Before now, she laughs at me whenever I showed her weird faces. She would say as my mind developed, I would understand them. Before now, these days, when I recall her idioms, I smile, they now make sense. I asked Luke about his girlfriend. Before now, he has not shown me one. Before now, and he had shared the bed with nothing less than 15 ladies since I have been with him. Before now, some had come here more than once. He is terrible. I barely sleep at night and there is nothing to distract me. Before now, no TV and no internet. Since my arrival, all they do here is to party in the afternoon and club at night. Most people come here for holidays. In my few last weeks, I have seen several faces already. Before now, Luke once told me, you might not remember the face but don't forget these 2 things. 1, the backside, and 2, how you were rocked. Before now, I wonder what that means. Before now, the other few here work around. It is either they work at the beach as instructors or as safeguards, or they work in bars, grocery stores, salons, music stores, and other necessities stores. Before now, nothing much happens where outside the holidays. Luke has a great connection with one of the bar owners. Before now, he is not the manager nor the bartender but does all those things and gets paid for it. Before now, he is the symbol of attraction at the bar and almost everybody knows him. Before now, it was as if he has been here his whole life. Before now, I heard he graduated college a year ago. Is he not supposed to be working with a white collar? Before now, I am not a fan of Luke but he is good with ladies, to be frank. When I got to his place, I made it clear that I was asked to come to live with him, so that I can find my path. He laughed scornfully as if I had spit on his face. He told me, you are here to learn how it works in college. How what works in college? He drew a calendar of 30 days with me and told me to summarize my day by drawing out symbols on the space provided. I slept throughout the first few days, then I saw Gina. Before now, she offered to suck me. Before now, I was amazed, what can this little girl do? Before now, she asked me to come to the restroom. I followed, and she gave me my wildest experience until that day. Before now, I had never been sucked before. Before now, but, as far as I can feel it, little Gina is not a novice in the game. Before now, she told me, she keeps numbers and her goal is to reach 1,000 before she graduates high school. Before now, I will soon reach my mark, she told me. Before now, I wonder what number I am on her list. After Gina, I had met several ladies. Before now, I had unbuckled my belt in bed than I had in the restroom. Before now, I am no more the little good boy that I used to be. Things had changed now. Before now, I was trying to regain my interest in art and paintings when Luke showed up, but instead, I have gone wild. I still paint today, even with a greater mind. Before now, but all I paint now are images of women who had gone naked in front of me. Everything has its own ups and downs, but now I could not tell if I am enjoying life or I am wasting my talent. Before now, I do not know right from wrong anymore. Before now, I just wanted to live this life and enjoy every bit of it. Before now, Luke is very good at persuading people to do things they don't plan to. I guess that was the reason he is so close with the bar owner. Before now, he studied psychology in college. He is a good student according to what his parent had told my mum over the phone. Before now, he is not using this knowledge right as far as I am concerned. He is so good at understanding and predicting people, which has won him so much luxury and fame. Before now, to be truthful here, he is not a good mentor. Before now, I had spent more than a month at his place and he has never mentioned anything about his career nor has he said anything concerning mine. What is he doing with his bachelor's degree? Before now, he gets paid for doing things I would do for free and get laid all night. Little did I know that Luke had been conversing with my mum on phone telling him about my progress. Before now, my mum's plan for me is to live it wild before going to college. Why will she do that? She told me herself when she called, as she usually does. Before now, that fateful day, she asked me the most unexpected question: who is Gina? Before now, I was stunned. Before now, who is Gina? I rebelled. Before now, don't be naughty, she rejoined. Before now, how did you know about Gina? Before now, I asked. Luke told me about Gina. Luke had told me about everything, she replied, and Gina seemed to be the interesting character in his stories. Before now, so Luke was not just giving me tips on how to reach for a girl's panties, he is also updating my mum about the progress I had made. Okay, I explained to her how Gina and I met and our journey so far. Before now, I made her realize that I was not proud of it. Before now, Gina is 2 years and a few weeks younger than me. Before now, I felt like I had taken advantage of her. That doesn't sound true. Before now, I promised my mum that I would not try that with a little girl anymore. Never. Before now, she laughed. It was so obvious that it was fake. Before now, she then said, to get the actual target, the vulnerable must be used. It was like she didn't get what was going on. Before now, I was not the hunter here. To be frank, I was the one been hunted. Before now, Gina with all her skills and experience could not be vulnerable. I am. Before now, I had been every lady's prey since I got here. People don't care if I enjoyed it or not anymore. They just wanted to satisfy their urge. Before now, no one knew. I didn't have so much experience myself. The only ones I had were Anna's and her dolls and the web. Before now, I haven't even dug a lady before. Before now, that was the reason my mum asked me to come to live with Luke. I don't know much, but I guess she is tired of picking my wet and sticky toilet rolls from the floor. Before now, she wanted me to stop fantasizing and start the real thing. Before now, I remember her asking me if I now know the difference. Before now, I told her that I still haven't found out yet. Getting laid, sucked, and licked is common here, and everyone except me, to all I know, had 3 out of 3. Before now, for me, getting sucked is okay. Within just a few weeks, I had squeezed more lemons than the actual ones and sucked on them that a newborn baby would have. Before now, I have a likeness for the big and saggy ones, and here sag ones are not something to be ashamed about. Before now, the saggier it is, the better the experience. Before now, I had gotten so many ladies disappointed for not reaching for their holes. Before now, but I am determined to keep my virginity. Before now, I am a Christian and I don't want to cross the line, that is if I haven't already. Anna had been calling me of recent, remembered. She said I was her favorite opposite sex. Before now, this had started recurring to me. Before now, was she asking to make up with me. Before now, she told me things that did not concern me a bit. She told me she would be going to Namibia to learn the ways of her ancestry route. Before now, yes, we aren't that close for me to know your plans. Before now, we had never talked about what she would love to become. All we talk about are assignments and school activities. I begin to wonder if she had an interest in me. Before now, maybe she purposely let me look at her from the window. Before now, she should have just said it in common words. Before now, I don't understand signs and idioms. My mum tried it with me and she failed. She spoke at length this time around, even though we are miles away. Before now, she told me of how her mother died of breast cancer when she was just 5 years of age. Before now, she told me that her father is a German. I never knew he is a pharmacologist until now. Before now, she told me about her first sex with a grown-up man. Before now, she told me all her experiences. Before now, it was a pitiful experience. Before now, I don't know why she is this open, but I am not interested in getting laid if that is what she wants. Before now, the calls kept calling, but I had never called her back, not once. Before now, don't judge me, I was being careful. Luke is a fan of inviting friends over after party. Before now, my first morning at his place, he hosted a party for me. Before now, he said the party was for me, but I was not included at all. Before now, all the balloons and strips had my names on them, but I was not in the center of the party. Before now, no one noticed me. Before now, I was shocked at such a welcome party. I left the living room for my room after Luke introduced me and no one noticed my absence. Before now, I peeped through the door hole and I saw all sorts of styles going on. Before now, the music was loud but no one was dancing to the beat. Everyone was digging, squeezing, or hitting someone. Wow, such a party on my behalf. Afterward, Luke would just invite his friends for a few shots. Before now, they chat and I am permitted to join in their discussion. Before now, they talked about business, cars, places, famous individuals, but mostly girls. I like this kind of chat. Before now, later, when they found out about my painting, art was included in the discussion. The interest was minute, but I appreciated it. Yesterday, Luke and his friends were at our place. Before now, we talked for a while before John asked if I am still a virgin. I was surprised by that question. Before now, it stunned me. I don't know the correct answer to give. Before now, was I even a virgin before coming here? Before now, what is the new age definition of a virgin? I tried to wave off the topic and Luke helped me in succeeding with that. Before now, we talked about Luke's sex life instead. Before now, I said so much about himself, I guessed he was trying to drive them away from me as much as possible. Before now, I appreciated what he did for me. I thanked him later and he gave me a big hug. It is well, he said to me. But come to think of it, that wasn't the first time someone would ask me if I was a virgin. Before now, Gina was the first to ask me. I told her I can't say but I haven't gotten laid yet. Before now, she laughed and I allowed her to laugh all as she could. Before now, I didn't stop her. She told me my secret is safe with her. Before now, another lady whose name I can't recall. Before now, I don't even think she knew me too. Before now, she was not the courteous type, she just wanted to get to the business. Before now, after the foreplay and series of sucking and stroking, she wanted me to go all the way down. Before now, I refused. She asked me the same question but I refused to respond. Before now, she got irritated and left. I never saw her again. Before now, I had encountered more of these misfit questions throughout my stay with Luke. Before now, I didn't tell Luke about it, but the rumor reached him. Before now, here, no one cared about your name. Before now, so, they referred to me as Luke's cousin. Before now, I spoiled Luke's face which is bad for business but Luke was fine with it. Before now, am I still a virgin? Before now, I wish to know your thoughts on this.
How I Caught My Sister and Kate's Boyfriend. This story portrays betrayal. It shows how betrayal can come from the people that are very close to us. This story details how I caught my sister and her closest friend's husband. Who would have thought my sister could do what she did? Sit back and enjoy how everything played out in this story. Many years ago, my dad settled in a small community in the city of Alabama. My dad was the third person to occupy a house in the community. 5 years after, he met my mom at his friend's party. He approached my mom and she agreed to date him. 2 years after, they got married officially. 6 months after my mom and my dad got married, Mr. John built a house close to my dad's house. So they became very close friends. A year after their marriage, my parents gave birth to me. 2 years after, they gave birth to my younger sister. Because of Mr. John and my dad's friends, he usually comes to our house anytime he likes. One day, my mother's friend Mrs. Mariah came to visit my mom to congratulate her on the birth of my younger sister. Fortunately, Mr. John came in while Mrs. Mariah was still around. My mom noticed how Mr. John couldn't take his eyes off Mrs. Mariah's boobs. He kept staring at every part of her body without minding who was looking at him. When Mrs. Mariah left, my mom called Mr. John and asked him why he couldn't take his eyes off her guest. She said she felt embarrassed by the way he was looking at her. Mr. John apologized to my mom for making her guest uncomfortable. He said he kept looking at her because he liked her. He pleaded with my mom to give him Mrs. Mariah's cell phone number. My mom said she cannot give out Mrs. Mariah's number unless she asks Mrs. Mariah herself. She said if Mrs. Mariah tells her to give him her number, she will, but if she does not, there is nothing she can do. My mom picked her phone in the presence of Mr. John and called her friend Mrs. Mariah. First, she appreciated her for coming to greet her. After that, she tabled Mr. John's request to her. Mrs. Mariah told my mom to give Mr. John her number. When my mom ended the call, she took a pen and paper and wrote Mrs. Mariah's number on it. After writing it, she handed it over to Mr. John. Mr. John appreciated my mom and left. When Mr. John got to his apartment, the first thing he did was to call Mrs. Mariah. He introduced himself to her and he told her how he got her cell phone number. He told her that he has a lot of things to tell her, but he cannot say it on the phone. Mrs. Mariah insisted that he should say it on the phone, but he declined. He said he would like to see her before he can say what he wants to say. Because of Mr. John's persistence, Mrs. Mariah agreed to see him. She said she will come to his house on Saturday. At exactly 9 a.m. on Saturday, Mrs. Mariah was at our house. My mom told me to show Mrs. Mariah where Mr. John lives. I took Mrs. Mariah to Mr. John's house. Immediately I showed her the door. I went back to our house. 1 hour after, my mom wanted to pass information across to Mrs. Mariah but she wasn't able to do so because she wasn't able to reach Mrs. Mariah on her cell phone. When she tried calling her multiple times without any response, she sent me there to check on Mrs. Mariah. When I got there, I knocked on the door gently, but there was no response. I knocked for more than 2 minutes without any response. When I didn't get any response, I pushed the door and it opened. All this while I have been knocking. I didn't know that the door was open. When I entered inside, I didn't see anybody in the sitting room. As I moved closer to the room, I heard how Mrs. Mariah was moaning. Her moaning was so loud that Mr. John had to cover her mouth with his hand. I wanted to know why she was moaning, so I went out of the room and started piping through the window. The window was very big, so I saw everything. I saw Mr. John on top of Mrs. Mariah. He used his left hand to cover her mouth to prevent people from hearing her moan. He was using his right hand to rub all over her body. Anytime he noticed that her moaning has stopped, he would kiss her. From where I was watching, you could see that Mrs. Mariah was enjoying the kissing. I could see how she was drawing Mr. John back to her when she attempts to get up on her. I watched them as they were on top of each other for 5 minutes. I didn't want to knock on the door so that Mrs. Mariah would not think that I saw what they were doing, and I didn't know what to tell my mom when I returned home. I stood at the window and watched them till they finished what they were doing. When I saw that Mr. John was not on top of Mrs. Mariah anymore, I went to the door and knocked. This time, Mrs. Mariah answered. She was sweating profusely because of what she had just done. As soon as she came out, I told her what my mom said I should tell her. She sent me back to my mom. She said I should tell my mom that she will see her before leaving. Immediately I heard that I left her presence, and I made my way back to her house. When I got home, my mom asked me why I stayed that long. It was a question I expected, so I prepared for it. I told my mom that I helped Mr. John do some home chores. I told her when I got there, Mrs. Mariah was the one doing the home chores, so I joined her. I told her that Mrs. Mariah promised to stop by when she is going to her house. 2 hours after, Mrs. Mariah came to our house in the company of Mr. John. You could see how happy they were. When Mr. John noticed that Mrs. Mariah and my mom were engaged in a conversation, he sneaked out without anyone noticing. When my mom looked back, she didn't see Mr. John. She asked me where he was, and I told her that I did not know when he left. When my mom knew that Mr. John had left, she changed the topic of the conversation to what happened at Mr. John's house. She asked her friend what went down there. Mrs. Mariah said nothing went down. She said Mr. John told her he wants them to be more than friends. He said if she agrees to his proposal, he will get married to her very soon. My mom was surprised by what she heard because since she knew Mr. John, he has never talked to her about marriage, nor has she seen him with a woman in his house before. She told Mrs. Mariah that she cannot count the number of times that my dad has told him to get a woman. My mom asked Mrs. Mariah about what Mr. John told her. Mrs. Mariah said she likes him, but she wants to take her time before making a decision. She said my mom knows how much pain men have caused her, so she wants to take her time before taking any decision this time around. My mom told her that she understood everything she has said perfectly. She told her that since she met Mr. John, she doesn't know him to be a bad person. She has always known him to be a person of impeccable character and moral uprightness. She told Mrs. Mariah that one of the reasons Mr. John and her husband are so close is because of his moral uprightness. While Mrs. Mariah was leaving, my mom urged her to think about it very well and make the best decision that will suit her and her career. Mrs. Mariah appreciated my mom for her advice, and she promised to make the best decision for herself. When Mrs. Mariah left, I kept remembering the scenes I saw in Mr. John's house. At first, I thought she was going to tell my mom when she asked her what happened in Mr. John's house. My dad arrived at exactly 7 p.m. As soon as he took his shower and settled in the dining, my mom began to tell him what happened between Mr. John and Mrs. Mariah. She told him that for the first time, Mr. John is taking steps to become a married man. My dad was happy with what he heard. He said he cannot wait for his friend to become a married man. 1 week after, Mrs. Mariah called my mom. She told my mom she has finally decided to agree with Mr. John's proposal. She said she will call him in the evening after work to tell him. My mom appreciated her. She said it's a decision she won't regret presently or in the future. When Mr. John left his workplace, he stopped at our house. When he entered our house, my mom was expecting him to talk about Mrs. Mariah, but he didn't. My dad wanted to ask him, but my mom cautioned him silently. She whispered to him not to ask him. While Mr. John was discussing with my parents, his phone rang. He brought out his phone, but he did not answer the call. The call came in the second time, but he didn't answer the call again. At that point, Mr. John became uncomfortable. He wasn't flowing with the conversation anymore. You could see that he wanted to leave urgently, but he didn't know how to excuse himself. When my mom noticed that, she went inside her room and called my father. My father didn't want to leave his seat, but she kept calling him repeatedly. When my dad left his seat to attend to my mom, Mr. John immediately took his leave. When my dad entered my mom's room, she told him that she called him so that Mr. John can be able to leave. She told him that it seems the person that was calling him repeatedly is Mrs. Mariah. She told my dad that she has something important to tell Mr. John. Before my dad and my mom, returned to the sitting room. They did not meet Mr. John. When John got home, he immediately put a call through to Mariah. He wanted to apologize to her for not picking her call, but she told him not to worry. She told him she knew he was with my parent, which was why he did not answer his call. Mr. John became relieved when he heard that. Mrs. Mariah said she called to discuss an important issue with him. She said she has been thinking of what he told her since the day she came to her house. She said it's a tough decision for her to take because she has suffered a lot. She said the decision she was about to take now was aided by my mom. She said my mom told her how upright and moral he was. She said she has agreed to his proposal. She said she hopes it's a decision she doesn't regret whether presently or in the future. Upon hearing what Mrs. Mariah said, Mr. John jumped for joy. He told Mrs. Mariah that she told him had made his day. He said this was probably his best day on earth. The next day, Mr. John came to our house with a smiling face. He was so happy that you could see it on his face. He didn't know that my parents knew what was making him smile, but they just pretended as if they didn't know anything. He and my parents started their conversation as usual. A few minutes into the conversation, he got a call. He brought out his phone and checked who was calling him. When he saw that the call was from Mrs. Mariah, he returned his phone to his pocket and silenced it. My parents were expecting him to talk about what Mrs. Mariah told him, but he didn't say anything. A few minutes after, he excused himself. When he went out, I saw him talking to Mrs. Mariah on his phone. After talking for more than 15 minutes on his phone, he returned to the sitting room to join my parents. When he entered, my mom asked him who he was talking to on the phone that kept him outside for so long. At that point, he decided to let the cat out of the bag, not knowing that my parents were aware of everything that happened. Mr. John said it was Mrs. Mariah that kept him out for so long. He said she has agreed to have an affair with him. My parents pretended as if they didn't know anything and jumped for joy. They congratulated Mr. John and urged him to make the wedding as fast as possible. 2 weeks after, Mr. John came to our house very early in the morning. He said he wants my dad to follow him to Mrs. Mariah's family house. He said Mrs. Mariah has told her parents about their relationship, and they have requested to see him. He said he doesn't want to go alone because he doesn't know what is waiting for him over there. My dad rushed to the bathroom to take his bath. After taking his bath, my mom served both of them breakfast. After breakfast, they entered Mr. John's car and left. After about 6 hours, they returned home. My dad entered our house while Mr. John went to his house. As soon as my dad entered the house, he asked for his food. He said the journey they undertook was very stressful. He said they had to leave there because of the distance. When my mom gave him his food, she sat close to him on the couch. She asked him what happened, where they went to. My dad said they were welcomed very well by Mariah's parents. He said they talked about other things like the wedding date, the wedding venue, and other things related to the wedding. He said they chose Sunday, January 5, 2020 for the wedding, and the venue is the Garden Place in Alabama. As soon as she heard that from my dad, she was very happy. She picked her phone immediately and called Mrs. Mariah. She congratulated her on her upcoming wedding and urged her to take very good care of herself for her new groom. A week before the wedding, Mrs. Mariah relocated to our house because she and my mom were the ones planning the wedding. My mom was in charge of almost all of the preparations for the wedding. 3 days before the wedding, my mom was very busy like she has never been. She was going from one place to another just to make sure that the preparation is in top gear. A day before the wedding, my mother did not come home. She called my dad at around 9 p.m. that she cannot make it back home because she has a lot of things to do at the venue. She said the venue decorators and the caterers need her attention very early in the morning of the wedding. She said if she comes home, it will be difficult for her to get to the venue very early. She said if she doesn't get there early, the preparations might not go according to plan. She said it was that and other reasons that made her book a room at a nearby hotel close to the venue. My dad wished her well and told her to take very good care of herself. He said she should call him if she needs anything. On Sunday morning, which was the day of the wedding, my father woke me up from sleep very early. He told me and my sister to take our bath and join him in his car. He said we have to get to the venue of the wedding very early so that we can help my mom. I hurriedly entered my bathroom while my sister went to my mom's bathroom. After taking our bath, we changed into our wedding outfit and joined our dad in the car. After about 1 hour and 30 minutes, we arrived at the venue of the wedding. I saw my mom going from one place to another just to make sure everything is according to plan. My sister and I joined her in carrying some of the drinks she brought to a more secure place. My dad left us at the venue and went to Mr. John's hotel. After 2 hours of moving from one place to another, my mom finally settled down on a chair. She rested for 15 minutes before she went back to her hotel to take her bath and change into her wedding outfits. While she was going, She left my sister and me at the venue to monitor all the items. 30 minutes after my mom left, she returned to the venue in her wedding dress. Her dress was so beautiful that everybody she met when she came back complimented what she wore. My mom dressed as if she was the bride of the day. The wedding was colorful. People from all spheres of life attended the wedding. There was a lot to eat and drink at the wedding. The couples thrilled their guests with nice dancing moves. The highlight of the event for me was when my mom and dad were called to the dancing floor by the anchor of the event. My sister and I could not contain our joy when we saw our parents on the dance floor. My sister joined them on the dance floor, but I didn't because I was very shy. The wedding ended at about 7 p.m. As soon as the guests started leaving, the couples went to their hotel rooms. My sister and I joined my mom in cleaning and washing all the items used at the wedding. We finished the cleaning around 10 p.m. My mom suggested that we should go back to the hotel because it was late, while my dad said we can still go to our house. We left there at around 10:15 and arrived home at midnight. As soon as we got home, we all went to our rooms. None of us woke up until 11 a.m. the next day. I was the first to wake up. When I checked the time, it was 11 a.m. I was wondering how I slept for that long. I went to my parents' room to check up on them, but they were still sleeping. I left them and went to the kitchen to get something to eat. My mom woke up at exactly 12:15 p.m. She couldn't believe her eyes when she checked the time. She woke my dad, who was still enjoying his sleep. When my dad opened his eyes, he was also surprised. He said he knew he was going to be very tired after the wedding. That was why he told them at the office that he won't be coming to work. My parents woke up very hungry, so my mom had to rush to the kitchen to prepare what we are going to eat. They didn't know that I had already sorted myself out in the kitchen. Therefore, I pretended as if I hadn't eaten. At exactly 2:15 p.m., my mom served our food. We all gathered at the dining. As we were eating, we were discussing what went down at the party the previous day. Everyone was talking about their highlights of the event. My dad said his highlight of the event was when the couples were called to the dancing floor. He said he didn't believe that his friend was going to dance because, for over a decade that he has known him, he has never seen him dancing. He said he was surprised when he saw his friend rocking the dance floor with his wife. My mom said she didn't have any major highlights because she was coordinating everything from where she stood. She said she is happy that everything went according to plan. When it came to my turn to speak, I told them that my highlight of the event was when both of them were called to the dancing floor. For me, it was bigger than the bride and the groom's dance. My mom and dad laughed. They asked me why I did not join them on the dance floor. I said they knew right from the time that I am a very shy person. I cannot dance in front of a large number of people. After the meal, my dad said he still needs some sleep. As soon as he went in, my mom followed him. My sister also stood up and went to her room. I was the only one left in the sitting room. When there was nothing to do, I picked up my novel and started reading. A week after the wedding, the couples returned home. We were in the sitting room when we heard a knock on our door. I went to the door to see who was knocking. Lo and behold, I saw the couples standing in front of our door. I screamed and hugged the couples so tightly. They entered the sitting room and sat close to each other on the couch. My dad asked about their honeymoon. He said hope they enjoyed it, and they replied in the affirmative. We talked about a lot of things. They appreciated my parent a lot for standing by them before, during, and after the wedding. After about 2 hours, the couple left our house. Mr. Mariah didn't go to work for the Fitz 2 weeks after the wedding. As soon as her husband leaves for work, she will come to our house. She will be at our house until 5 p.m. before she leaves. After the wedding, our relationship with the couples began to grow from strength to strength. We do almost everything together. If my father is invited to an event, he won't go except Mr. John agrees to follow him. My mom also does the same thing. 11 months after the wedding, Mrs. Mariah gave birth to a bouncing baby girl which she named Kate. The whole community was thrown into a frenzy mood with the arrival of Mrs. Mariah's daughter. As soon as she came back from the hospital, my mom moved to her house because she needed a lot of help and there was no one to help except my mother. My mom stayed with her for 1 month before returning home. Even when she returned home, she was still visiting her every day. She will go to her place in the morning and leave in the evening. My mom and Mrs. Mariah have been friends before she got married to Mr. John. The first day Mr. John saw Mrs. Mariah was in her house. These reasons and many more were my mom does not want Mrs. Mariah to experience any pain or suffering even for a second. 2 years after, Kate enrolled in my sister's school. Kate and my sister became very close because they did everything together. When Kate comes back from school, she will be with my sister in our house. Their friendship continued to grow stronger even though they were not of the same age. My sister graduated from school at 10 years old. She left Kate there, who was still 7 years. My sister enrolled in St. Augustine High School after she graduated from the school. 3 years after, Kate graduated from primary school and joined my sister at St. Augustine High School. When school is on break or if Kate is free in her class, she usually goes to my sister's class to play. Soon, she started having suitors from boys in my sister's class. The first guy to approach her was Peter. One day, Kate came to my sister's class like she used to. She played with my sisters and her classmates like she used to. Peter sat somewhere waiting for Kate to leave so that he can follow her. As soon as Kate stepped her foot outside of the class, Peter followed her. While Kate was walking to her class, she heard someone calling her name from a close distance. As she turned back to see who was calling her, she met Peter standing in front of her. She asked him why he stopped her. Peter said he doesn't know where to start from. He said he has been taking a close look at her since she has been coming to their class. He said he has been waiting for the right time to tell her what he wants to tell her. He said he felt now is the right time. He said he wants her to know that he loves her and will do everything to have her. Kate looked at him and laughed. She said she appreciated him for having the courage to come to her, but she doesn't think she can have a relationship with him. Peter asked if she has anyone she was dating. She said that is not Peter's business. Peter said he will give her time to think about what he told her. He said maybe if she thinks about it, she might make a decision that will favor him. Kate said she doesn't need to think about anything. She said she has already taken her decision and her decision cannot change. Peter left Kate's presence heartbroken. He went to his class and sat alone without talking to anyone. His classmates kept asking him what happened to him, but he refused to talk to anyone. When Kate and my sister were going home after school, she narrated everything that happened with Peter to my sister. She told her how Peter approached her when she left their class, and she told her that she let him know immediately that she cannot date him. My sister said that was why he was moody and refused to anybody in the class. The next day, my sister went to Peter and told him that she knew why he was moody yesterday. She told him that Kate told her everything. Peter said he knew Kate would tell her because they are close friends. Peter told my sister to help him talk to Kate. He said if Kate agrees to date him, he would give my sister a wonderful gift. My sister told Peter to forget about Kate. She told Peter that she knows Kate very well. She said once Kate takes a decision, she doesn't change it. She told Peter to look elsewhere. 2 weeks after, another guy approached Kate. This time around, it was a guy in the senior class. He has been watching Kate for a long and he decided that day was the day he would do the needful. John waited for the school to close before approaching Kate. While Kate and my sister were going home, as usual, John stopped them. He asked Kate if he could speak to her for a few minutes. Kate told my sister to wait for her while she joined John. When she walked to where he was, she asked him why he stopped her. John said he knew she is going home, but he has to tell her what he has been craving to tell her for months. Kate asked him what he has been craving to tell her. John said he wants to go straight to the point because he doesn't want to waste her time. John told Kate that he loved her the first day she was brought to the school. He said, since then, he has been waiting for a day like this. He said he is a shy person, but he just summoned the courage to approach her today. John was a handsome boy, so almost every girl liked him. Kate told him that she has heard what he said. She said she will think about it and let him know her decision. Kate hurriedly joined my sister, and they continued their journey home. My sister asked Kate what John told her. Kate told my sister to guess what she thinks John told her. My sister said John wants to date her. Kate smiled and replied in the affirmative. My sister asked Kate what she thinks about John. Kate said she likes him. She said if she doesn't like him, she would have told him immediately that she is not interested. Kate said she will wait for 3 days or 1 week before accepting his proposal. 1 week after, Kate accepted John's proposal and they started dating. They were the topic of discussion in the school as they are seen in every place together. One day, Kate invited John to her house because she knew her parent would not be at home. When John arrived, he met Kate and my sister in the room. Unfortunately, Kate received a call from her mother that she should come and meet her in front of a mall. She left the house, leaving John and my sister in the room. 5 minutes after Kate left, my sister and Peter were already having sex. I caught them when my mom told me to help her call my sister. When I got to the door, I saw them kissing. They were so engulfed in the kissing that they did not know when I entered. As soon as I saw them, I made my way out of the room. I stood in front of the door and I was watching how they were kissing themselves. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or if this is what I should do, or please let me have your thoughts on this. Let me have your thoughts on this. Let me have your thoughts on this.
This story takes us to a 16-year-old girl. Sweet 16, they say. But they don't know that life can be cruel even at that time. What can happen to a 16-year-old to think that life is cruel? Let me introduce myself. I am Anita. I come from the city that never sleeps, New York. Just like New York, I never sleep too. New York can be very inspirational, especially at night. You can't miss the lights. I live in the 10th floor of our apartment, and the views are just crazy. I always nap after school, during the day, so that I can enjoy the warm nights that New York brings. My favorite part of the day is sitting on my balcony, just like I am right now. I either am writing, watching a TV show, or sometimes I get lost in my own thoughts. My go-to TV show right now is definitely Game of Thrones. Everyone has a guilty pleasure. For me are TV shows and movies. I don't have a specific favorite genre. It simply has to have a beautiful, inspirational message behind it. My favorite part of our apartment is definitely our balcony. I spend the most time there. I eat there. You can learn a lot about the city on your balcony. You see a lot of stuff that happens. A lot of cool people just walking around. I witnessed a lot of breakups between random couples, drunk people passing on the streets. And it's kind of entertaining. Since I spent a lot of my time on the balcony, I almost know every one of my neighbors' stories. You might think that I spy or something, but I don't. I just can't help but stare. I have a lot of vases of flowers that I take care of it. It's kind of becoming my hobby too. I even got some lemons that I can't wait to grow and eat. On my balcony, I am never alone. I have my sweet little one, my cat Bella. I am a dog person kind of type, but dogs are hard to keep inside. Our Bella has been so easy to live with. She is white and fluffy. She is sweet and caring and the best cuddle partner that I could ever ask for. I've had Bella for 3 years. It was a birthday present from my parents. Bella loves to stare out of our balcony too. She has a curious soul. Just like me. Sometimes I feel like we are the same soul but in different bodies. It's like she understands what I say. I hope she doesn't feel lonely. We have thought about getting another kitty, so she can have some company. But we haven't decided yet. Besides my cat Bella, I live, of course, with my 2 beautiful parents. I am their only child, and they always got me feeling special. They feel sorry that they never had the chance to give me a sister. But they could have other children. However, even though sometimes it's hard, I never complain in front of them. My mother's name is Emma, and she is a veterinary. I love visiting her at work and just petting all those beautiful animals. My mother is very gentle and kind, and the animals love her. It's like the animal notices a good soul and feels comfortable. My father, Jim, on the other hand, is a lawyer. His job is more stressful, and I barely understand some of it. There are nights that he comes late at night because he is at his office working. My parents live in 2 different worlds, but still, they get each other so well. I aspire to have a love like theirs. It breaks my heart to think that someday they will get old and that I won't have them forever. We, as a family, try our best to spend time together. We love Sundays. My parents don't work on Sunday, so we always go somewhere and spend time together. Besides my life at home, I also have a life outside of it. I go to school. I am a sophomore. I have one very close friend who happens to be my neighbor. Her name is Sarah. She makes high school easier. We go to school together, and we come back together. She is like a sister to me. Like everyone, I don't like school. But I try my best to study and do good in school. There are a lot of parties that my school organizes. There are times that Sarah and I go there. My parents don't mind, they trust me. I can't lie and say that I never tried alcohol because I did. However, I have never been 100% drunk. I am not the type of person that gets attached to things. Just because I might enjoy drinking at a party doesn't mean that I will continue to drink every day. I know when to drink and when not to. There are times when I buy a pack of cigarettes just because of curiosity. I enjoy smoking sometimes, but I know that I will never smoke it in the future. I have control of myself. When you go to these parties, a lot of stuff can happen if you are not very careful. A lot of my friends that go to my school do drugs. This scares me. Smoking and drinking don't make you cool. But I think that's how some of my friends think. Even though those parties might not be the best idea. I met someone special 1 year ago. I met a boy named Abel. We have been dating for a year now. We met at a party, then we found out that we were going to the same school. Abel is 1 year older than me. We know that we are young and that maybe we won't last. At least that is what they say. But I know that we love each other. Abel is straight out of a movie. He is the funniest person that I've ever met. He is my first kiss. And I want him to be my first everything. He is the reason why I haven't cut my hair for a year. He just loves it. We would go to the cinema and kiss for hours. My parents found out about Abel months ago. So they know that we are together. They respect my choices. And they believe in us. Even my parents were so young once they started dating. So I guess we are all right. Another good thing about New York is that you can wear whatever you want. And none would say a word. It's the city where you can show off your fashion and not be afraid of it. However, even at 16-year-old, life can be cruel and unpredictable. It had been months since I haven't felt like myself. I felt deep inside of me that something wasn't all right. I started not wanting to go out and meet with my loved ones, Sarah and Abel. I didn't have energy for anything. And I just wanted to be left alone. I wasn't eating, and I couldn't even finish an episode of my favorite TV show. This was all of a sudden. I don't know why it happened. Even my cat Bella started to notice it. She would come up at my legs and just stare at my eyes like she asked me if I was okay. But I wasn't. I was meeting up with Abel. But I couldn't even speak. Later, I got informed that Abel had spoken to my parents about this. They all thought that I was going through a depressive phase. But I knew that I wasn't that type of person. However, I decided to meet up with a psychologist since my parents told me to. Clearly, this wasn't helping me since I couldn't even get up from my bed. My parents weren't home most of the time. And I couldn't even go to school. I was home alone. So Abel used to sleep over at my apartment. One night we fell asleep on the balcony talking about our future. We talked about having sex. And we agreed that we would go for it the next time we meet with each other. We were going strong for a year. So why not? On a Sunday night, my mother came up to me and noticed that my head was burning from the temperature. We rushed to the hospital. And that's where the real sad story begins. I don't remember the ride to the hospital. But I remember waking up to a hospital bed. My mother had told me that the doctors made some tests. She said that the tests would arrive the next day and that today I had to sleep here. But I had other plans on my mind. Today, I should have been meeting up with Abel. It should have been our special night. But life works in mysterious ways. I guess. I've had the best sleep since I could remember that night. The next day I woke up to Abel texting me. He didn't know where I was. Last night he went to a party. He thought that I would meet him there. I couldn't help but think about who he was and who he met there. However, I texted and let him know that I was at the hospital. My mother and father seemed so worried that I couldn't understand why. The minute that the tests came, Abel knocked on the door and went in. He was standing near me. And I could hear the smell of the alcohol. He had been drinking yesterday. And I was just feeling jealous of what he could have been doing. The doctor was telling me the results of the tests. But I couldn't understand what was wrong. I looked at my mother's eyes. And I saw some tears. Then all of a sudden, I heard the word cancer. My parents started crying, but Abel and I were just shocked. The doctors said that it would be for the better if we started chemotherapy tomorrow. Chemotherapy, tomorrow, how could my life change in a second? I just wanted to get home, to my movies and to my cat. That night I barely slept. The next day came so fast. Abel wasn't here. He had to go to school. I already felt like we weren't so close. My doctors said that the chemo treatment would last between 3 to 6 months. But I was ready. I just wanted to get over it. I took the first dose of the first day. Can't say that I loved it. My parents took some weeks off of work and were staying there with me. Then, bad news after bad news. So, basically, if you're doing chemo, there is a chance that you're gonna lose weight and hair. Months went by, and things just got worse. My cancer was not getting better, and I was still taking the chemo treatment. I couldn't spend time with Abel or Sarah, and I missed falling asleep with Bella. Abel would come after school, but nothing was feeling the same anymore. I miss everything about my life. I am writing this on my hospital bed, wishing I was on my balcony. The doctor said that it's good if I start and take walks around the city. One day, I decided to do so. As I was getting ready, I noticed how bad I looked. I couldn't even notice myself anymore. I was so skinny, and half of my hair fell down. I was wearing a hat, but it was summer. I decided to go with my mother only. She thought that it would be a good idea if we called Abel. But I don't want Abel to see me this way. I went out and saw what I was missing out on. The sun was out, the world was full of colors. You should have seen the girls on their sundresses out for lunch. I felt like my soul had gotten older. That's when I decided that I shouldn't be your problem, Abel. I knew that I had to set Abel free. I know that he does not love me anymore. I wasn't the same person. I didn't look the same. He always used to say that he loved my hair. Now what? I didn't have any hair left. He should continue to live his life. He's young. I texted him so we could meet and say our goodbyes. That was the last time that Anita had written. She had actually passed that day. The cancer had covered her whole body. Her body's ashes are going to be on her favorite place, her balcony, so her soul can still watch over the beautiful sky of the city that never sleeps.
My name is Anna. I am 19 years of age. I was born in Washington. I started my life as a little girl in the city of Washington. My parents moved to Washington a few weeks after they got married. 2 years after they gave birth to me, I started primary education in Washington. After my primary school education, I was enrolled in another high school in Washington. When I graduated from high school, I got admission into a college in Texas. For the first time in my life, I had to live without my parents and live elsewhere. My dad got a good apartment for me because he didn't want me to stay in the school hostel. The apartment was nice. I fell in love with the apartment as soon as I entered. My dad stayed with me for a day before he traveled back to Washington. The next day was the day I was supposed to resume school. I woke up very early, I took my bath and I prepared for school. My dad got me a taxi driver that will be driving me to school and be taking me back home after lectures. As soon as I finished my preparation, I called the taxi driver. He called me immediately. He arrived at my gate. I entered the taxi and we drove off to school. We arrived at school at exactly 7:50 a.m. The school was so big that I couldn't find my way to my faculty. While I was figuring out how to locate my faculty, I saw a young guy standing close to a tree. He was talking to someone on the phone, so I waited for him to end the call. As soon as he ended the call, I said hi. He replied and asked if he could help me. I told him that I am a new student. I said this is my first time in school. I said I am a law student, but I don't know where my faculty is. He welcomed me to the school. He said I will enjoy my stay at the school. He said I should follow him because he is also going to the faculty of law. I was very that help was in sight. After all the things I went through, I finally saw someone willing to help. We walked for 2 minutes and he showed me the faculty. He took me to my class so that I can meet my colleagues. When I got to my class, a lecturer was already in class. I stood outside waiting for the lecturer to come out so that I can enter the class. While the lecturer was dictating from his note, he walked to the front of the class. He saw me standing outside and he told me to enter the class. When I entered the class, he asked me if I am a member of the class and I replied in the affirmative. He asked me why I was standing outside. I said I am coming for the first time. I said I couldn't enter the class because I met him teaching. The lecturer told me to look for a sit and settle down. He said I do not have to wait outside when I am late to class. He said no lecturer will send me out of a class because I came late. The lecturer told me to take my sit and he continued teaching. We didn't have any lectures after that class. So, we decided to use the opportunity to know ourselves. The first thing we did was appoint a class representative. One of the teachers was called to help us organize it. He stood in front of the class and welcomed everyone. He advised us to take our studies seriously. He said the first and second years are the most important for a student. He said once a student does badly in his first 2 years, he said there is no way he or she will have a good result. He said once a student can scale through the first 2 years with a good result, he or she will graduate with a good grade. He said having a good grade is a big advantage in the labor market because every organization wants a good and competent worker. After advising us, he went back to the subject matter. He told those that have an interest in becoming the class representative to step forward. 2 female students and 3 female students went forward. The lecturer said it is now in our hands to decide who our class representative will be. He said because we are all meeting ourselves for the first time, he will give the 5 students the chance to sell themselves to the class. They mounted the podium one after the other to sell themselves to the class. After 45 minutes, they were through with their manifesto. The lecturer mounted the podium again. He said the next thing is to appoint our class representative through voting. He said the student that has the highest vote will become the class representative. We were 100 in the class, 95 of us were left to cast the vote. The lecturer told every student to tear a sheet of paper and write the name of their favorite candidate on it. He said after writing it, every student should step forward and drop it in the ballot box. The lecturer told the contestants to mention their names to the class again before the commencement of the voting. The first student stepped forward and mentioned his name. He told the class that his name is John. The second student stepped forward and did the same. He told the class that his name is Patrick. The third student stepped forward and she also did the same. She told the class that her name is Angela. The fourth student stepped forward and did the same. She told the class that her name is Anita, while the last student told the class that his name is Henry. After they mentioned their name, he told us to do as instructed. We all tore a sheet of paper and wrote the name of our preferred candidate. After the vote, the lecturer told one of us to count the vote. After the counting, the lecturer announced the results. He said John had 65 votes, Patrick had 10 votes, Anita had 10 votes, and Angela had 6 votes while Henry had 4 votes. The lecturer said by vote cast, John has been elected as the class representative. The whole class shouted. Some of the students went to the podium and hugged him. After some time, the lecturer told everybody to return to their seats while the contestants should remain standing. He told the candidates to display the spirit of sportsmanship by shaking each other. After they did that, he told the other 4 students to return to their seats while John should remain standing. The lecturer told John that if he wants to be a successful class representative, he has to take everybody in the class along in everything he does. He said if a lecturer gives the class assignment, he has to make sure that everybody in the class gets the assignment. He said if he wants to submit an assignment too, he has to make sure that at least the majority of the class has submitted. He said the welfare of the class is part of his duties. He said if he does not see any student in class, he has to call that student to know why he or she is absent. He said one of the ways he can achieve that is to create a WhatsApp group for the class. After the lecturer finished his speech, he told John to return to his seat and the lecturer left our class. When the lecturer left the class, some of John's friends went to him and congratulated him again. They took him to the restaurant to celebrate his victory. When I realized that there was nothing left for me to do, I called my taxi driver to take me home. He told me to wait for him in front of the school gate so that he wouldn't bother entering the school gate. I boarded one of the taxis on the campus and I alighted at the school gate. 5 minutes later, my taxi driver arrived. I entered his car and he drove off. I got home around 3 p.m. As soon as I entered the house, I went straight to the bathroom and took a shower. After taking a shower, I ate the food I bought on my way home. After eating, I lied down on my couch and slept off. I woke up around 8 p.m. When I woke up, I walked into my room and continued my sleep. I woke up very early the next day because I didn't want to get to class late. I called my taxi driver before I entered the bathroom to take my bath. I knew he will arrive before I finish my preparation for class. 20 minutes after, my taxi driver called me and informed me that he is in front of my gate. I was still putting on my cloth when he called. I told him that I will join him in a few minutes. 5 minutes after, I joined my taxi driver in his car and we drove to school. I entered my class at exactly 7:50 a.m. Our first lecture was to begin at 8 a.m., so we had little time to gist. John walked to the front of the class and addressed the class for the first time since he was elected as the class representative. He thanked us all for voting for him and he promised to work diligently for the success of all the students in the class. He said he will make sure every information is passed as it when due. He said his first task as a class representative is to create a class group. He passed a blank paper around the class. He said everyone should write his or her cell phone number on the paper so that they can be added to the group. At exactly 8 a.m., a lecturer entered our class, so we suspended what we were doing. When the lecturer ended his class, another lecturer came in. We had lectures until we went for a break. After the break, there was no lecture, so we continued writing our numbers. John created a group that night and he started giving us information on the group. He would tell us whenever we have a lecture or whenever a lecture is cancelled. One day, I received a message from an unknown number on WhatsApp. The message I received was, "Hey pretty, how are you?" I didn't reply because the number looked strange. While I was browsing the internet, the number called me via WhatsApp again. I was reading important content on my phone, so I didn't answer the call. When I finished reading what I was reading, I replied to the message with the hope that it was someone I know. After replying that I was fine, I asked the person who he is and how he got my number. He asked me which of the questions do I want him to answer first. I said he should answer anyone first. He said his name is Nelly. I said I don't know anybody with that name. He said I might probably not know him but he knows me. I asked him where he knew me. He said we are in the same class. I asked him how he got my number. He said he picked my number on the class group. As soon as I heard that, I became very angry. I threatened to report him to the class representative for taking my number on the group without informing me. When he heard that I was going to report him, he started begging me. He said I shouldn't report him. He promised that he won't do that again. I told him that if I see his message on my phone again, I will report him for intruding on my privacy. He apologized once again and promised not to intrude on my privacy again. The next day in school, I saw the lecturer that was in class on the first day I went to school. I was the one that greeted him because he didn't recognize me. He responded to my greeting but he was still looking at me like he knew me from somewhere. I told him that I was the student that came late to the class on the first day of resumption. I said I was waiting outside when he called me into the class and asked me why I was standing outside. When I finished my explanation, he remembered who I was. He said he hasn't come to our class since that day because he traveled. He asked me how I have been coping with my study. I told him that I have been coping very well. While I was about to walk away, he held my hand. It was a shocker to me. I was surprised and at the same time, I was afraid. He asked me whether I have a cell phone and I replied in the affirmative. He gave me his phone and told me to type my save my number on his phone. I collected his phone and did as he instructed. I walked away from him and I returned to my class. We had only one lecture after that. As soon as the lecture ended, I called my taxi driver to come and take me home. When he arrived, I entered the car and he drove me home. I was very hungry when I got home. I rushed into the kitchen to prepare a meal for myself. While I was preparing the meal, I quickly entered the bathroom and took a shower. 30 minutes later, my food was ready. I ate my food in the sitting room. After eating, I lied on my couch like I used to. At exactly 9 p.m., I went into my room and slept off. It was my lecturer's call that woke me the next morning. I was surprised to see his call very early in the morning. I didn't want to answer the phone at first, but I thought within myself that he might have an important message for me. When I answered the phone, I respectably greeted him. He noticed that my voice was not as audible as it used to. He asked me if I was still sleeping. I told him that it was his call that woke me up from my sleep. He apologized for disturbing my sleep. I said he doesn't need to apologize because his call came at the right time. I said if he didn't call, I would have been late for class because I will still be sleeping by now. He said if I come to school, I should make sure that I see him in his office before I leave. I told him that I would do that. As soon as the call ended, I started thinking within myself that why will a lecturer want to see me in his office? I concluded within myself that he might have important information for me. When I finished preparing for school, I called my taxi driver. He arrived in a few minutes and he drove me off to school. I got to school around 7:45 a.m. I knew I had 15 minutes before the commencement of the lecture, so I went straight to Dr. Peter's office. I met his door open, but he wasn't in his office. I called his cell phone number to inform him that I am in front of his office. But he didn't answer his call. When I didn't see him, I had no other option than to go to class. 5 minutes later, Dr. Peter returned my call. He asked me where I am. I told him that I was in front of his office when I called him. He said he was in a meeting with his colleagues, which was the reason he wasn't able to answer my call. I told him that I have left his office and I am presently in class. He said he will be in his office by 9 p.m. He said from 9 p.m. I can come and see him in his office. At exactly 8 a.m., a lecturer entered our class. He taught us until 10 a.m. As soon as he left, another lecturer entered the class. We had lectures until 2 p.m. As soon as Elle left the class, I went straight to the school's restaurant because I was very hungry. After eating to my satisfaction, I called Dr. Peter. When he answered the phone, he asked me where I was. I told him that I am at the school restaurant. He said I can come and see him in his office now. I left the school restaurant and walked to Dr. Peter's office. When I got to the door of his office, I knocked. He already knew I was the one, therefore, he didn't hesitate to tell me to enter. When I entered his office, he told me to sit on his couch. I was surprised to see a very big couch in his office. I sat on the couch thinking why this man invited me to his office. He excused himself and went out of his office. He returned 5 minutes later with a bottle of wine. I told him that he didn't need to disturb himself because I just left the school restaurant. He said it's not compulsory I drink the wine in his office, he said I can take it home. He placed the wine in front of me and sat very close to me. He didn't say anything for some seconds, so I started wondering why he told me to come in the first place. I looked at his face and I asked him the reason he asked me to see him in his office. Dr. Peter said since he became a lecturer, he has had nothing to do with his students. He said he tries to avoid his students. He said my case seems different. He said he began to like me from the first day he saw me. He said he knows what he is about to tell me might sound weird, but it is from the bottom of his mind. Dr. Peter said he likes me and he wants me to be his girlfriend. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh when he said it. It was annoying to me because I knew he will have a wife at home. I asked him whether he has a wife at home. He said he has a wife and 2 kids. I said why he will want to date a young girl like me when he has a wife at home. He said I shouldn't bother about his wife. He said his wife wouldn't know about our relationship. I stood up angrily and walked out of his office. I didn't even bother to call my taxi driver that day because of the anger in me. I used public transport to get to my house. When I got home, I took a shower to relax. After taking the shower, I cooked a delicious meal for myself. While I was in the sitting room watching television, Dr. Peter's call came in. I thought within me whether to answer the phone or not. Before I could decide, the call ended. A few seconds later, he called again. I answered at this time with an angry tone. Immediately I answered the call. I asked him why he was calling me. He said he wanted to let me know that what I did was very wrong. He said even if I do not want to date him, I shouldn't have walked out on him. He said at least he is old enough to be my father. I told him that if he knows he is old enough to be my father, why he would want to date someone as young as his daughter. He became very angry and started ranting on phone. He said he would let me know that he is my lecturer. He said I will suffer a lot to pass his course. He said he has a lot of friends in the department. He said he will do everything to frustrate my stay in school. He said he has come across many stubborn students like me during his career and he has dealt with them severely. He said my case won't be any different. I ended the call in anger. Throughout that night, I was very angry. The next day, I went to school very angry. I got to school at exactly 7:50 a.m. At exactly 8 a.m., Dr. Peter entered our class. He taught us for 2 hours before he left our class. As soon as he left the class, I walked out of the class and sat under a chair that was under a tree. While I was sitting, a young guy in his mid-20s approached me. He greeted me and I responded. He noticed that there was an element of anger in me. He asked what could make a young and beautiful girl like me angry at that time of the day. I told him that I am fine. He said his name is Nelly. I said I do not know anybody with such a name. He said I will remember him if I think very well. I told him that I don't know anybody with such a name. He said he was the guy that sent me a message on WhatsApp some days ago. He said he came to apologize for what he did. I told him that he shouldn't have bothered because I have forgotten about it. Nelly and I began to talk that day and we bonded very well. We talked until the school closed. After the school closed, we went to our respective homes. When I got home, I was the first to send Nelly a message on WhatsApp. I told him to forget about what happened the previous day. I said he can chat and call me anytime he wants. Henry was so happy. He said he wanted to know why I was angry back in school. I told him that his anger was caused by one of our lecturers. He asked me who the lecturer is. I said it is Dr. Peter. I told Nelly that Dr. Peter called me one morning that I should see him in his office. I said I didn't know what I wanted to do for him, but I went. I said when I got there, he told me something irritating. Nelly asked what he told me. I said he told me that he wants to date me. I said when he mentioned it, I walked out on him. I said when I got home, he called me and threatened that he will make sure I fail his course. Nelly asked what I did after that. I said I didn't do anything. I said I have made up my mind to read very well for the upcoming examination. I said I want to see whether he will fail me if I write what he taught me in class. I told Nelly that I was already feeling sleepy. I said we will meet in school the next day. The next day in school, Nelly came to me and told me that he wants to tell me something. He said he doesn't know if I will accept it or not. I said he should say what he wants to say. He said he will like to stay in my place so that we can read together for the upcoming exam. I said that's a good idea. I said reading together will help me a lot. I left school around 1 p.m. that day because we weren't doing anything. None of our lecturers came to class because we have already concluded the topics for the semester. We were all waiting for our examination. 1 week before the exam, Nelly came to my house and we started staying together. We drafted a timetable for our reading. We had 8 courses in total, so we divided them into 2. We will read a course in the morning and another in the afternoon. We were reading one day when I mistakenly saw Nelly's anaconda through his boxer. Nelly's anaconda was very hard. I knew Nelly was thinking about having sex with me. I wanted him to know that I saw his anaconda, so I asked him why his anaconda was so hard. He said he doesn't know. He said it happens to him sometimes. I smiled knowing that he was lying. I moved close to him and I held his anaconda. As soon as I held his anaconda, he dipped his hands in my boobs too. I was caressing his anaconda and he was caressing my boobs. The pleasure was out of this world. After caressing me for minutes, I walked him to my room and we had sex. After the sex that day, we continued to have sex until the day of the exam. On the day of the commencement of our exam, we had early morning sex before we left for school. The exam came and I did my best. I was expecting a very good result because I read very well for the exam. 2 weeks after the exam, the result was out. We received a message from the school that we should check our results on our portal. I was afraid to check. I called Nellie that he should help me check it. Nellie said I should give him 5 minutes. 10 minutes later, Nellie called me. I was afraid to pick the call. When I eventually picked the call, Nellie read my results to me. It was a fantastic result. I did very well in all my courses including Dr. Peter's course. My result was the best in my class. 2 weeks later, we resumed for the second semester. People began to notice me in class. I began to have a lot of friends because everybody wanted me to share my knowledge with them. 4 years later I graduated from college as the best graduating student in my school. The convocation ceremony was attended by many people. My parents invited a lot of their friends to my convocation. They wanted them to come and see how their daughter made them proud. After the convocation, I left Texas and returned to Washington with my parents. I stayed with my parents for 3 months before I got a job in a reputable company in California. When I got the job, I left Washington and relocated to California. I resumed at the office the next Monday after I traveled to Washington. When I resumed, my first stop was at the office of the chief executive officer of the company. She welcomed me. She told me what the company wants from me and she told me to make them proud. When I left the chief executive officer's office, I was taken to the office of the manager. The manager told me almost exactly what the CEO told me. From the manager's office, I was taken to the office of my direct boss. My direct boss briefed me on a lot of things. He told me my job description, the do's and don'ts of the organization, and the level of performance that is expected of me. After the entire introduction, I was taken to my office. The manager brought 2 ladies to my office.
He said they are my assistants.
He said I should call on any of them if I need anything. Days went by and I continued my job in the company. I made sure that I do all that is expected of me without delay. I noticed that my boss started having an interest in me. I was happy because he is a handsome and caring guy. Most of the time, he takes me on a lunch break.
He buys other things for me aside from food.
I was enjoying his company, waiting patiently for him to say what I wanted to hear. One day, I wore a very sexy dress to the office. The dress was so sexy that my boss had to compliment it twice. My boss used to compliment my dress often, but it was just too much that day. When he kept complimenting me, I knew he was up to something. I was sitting in my office when I saw his call. I hurriedly answered thinking he has something important for me. He told me to come to his office. When I got to his office, I stood for 3 minutes and my boss did not say anything. After some time, he walked close to me. Once again, he talked about my dress. He asked me if he can kiss me. I said he can. He said he doesn't want an ordinary kiss. He said what he wants is a French kiss. I said I haven't heard of that before and I do not know what it means and how to do it. He said I shouldn't worry, that he will teach me. He said he wants to explain it to me before we start. He said a French kiss is a kiss in which one or both partners use their tongues to stimulate each other's mouths for mutual sexual pleasure. My boss taught me French kiss and we did it. It was an exciting time with my boss. I kept asking for more and my boss was always ready to give me. Hey, guys, please let me know if this is right or if this is what I should do, or please let me have your thoughts on this. Hi guys, my name is Anita, and I am 17 years old. I am energetic and passionate about life. I hate to be on the losing side. I have experienced a lot of things that a girl my age shouldn't experience. I can't say that I lack the basic amenities of life. No. On the contrary, I have always had the things I wanted. Some of which were provided to me by my father, others, I was made to get myself by my mother. One could envy me from a distance, but when you come close to me and come into my world, you will discover that all the happiness, love, joy, and care were just an illusion, and my open world is not one you would desire. I had money but lacked the attention of my parents. Yes, our home was broken. I am the product of divorced parents, whose relationship was a mistake on the part of my dad and manipulation on the part of my mom. I stayed with my mom, who never really cared how I was doing except when she needed to use me for her games. My dad would trade anything just to be with me, but my mom kept me as leverage. Dad never knew the real me, and mom didn't care. I'm sure that if my dad knew what his ex-wife was turning his daughter into, he would fight tooth and nail just to make sure I was taken away from her. Mom had us relocating on a constant basis, and so, I never had a steady life. I never had regular friends. I was here today and gone tomorrow. My academic life was as good as dead. I was no better than a dropout. We had to change schools frequently too, and wherever we went, Mummy made me lie that my dad was dead. This was something I never told Dad. People seemed drawn to me out of compassion. The girl who lost her dad. There was a time when I usually found myself wishing that things were different. As a growing child, I would find myself wishing that I had parents who could see eye to eye. It was just too much for me. I am who I am today because of my mom. And I am not grateful to her. She exposed me to the realities of life faster earlier than necessary. I can clearly remember the first day I saw people having sex. It is a memory I guess I would live with for the resting my life. There is nothing that I wouldn't give to wipe it off my mind. I can vividly remember coming back home from school really tired, wishing I would just for once run into the loving arms of a mother, only to have my dreams broken. I got home that day and found the door locked. Ask went by the window, I saw what I hate to remember. There was my mom used by 2 men. I was horrified at my bones. I couldn't move. I just stood looking with tears pouring out of my eyes. After about 10 seconds, she turned her head, only to find her 12-year-old daughter crying. I ran away. I didn't know where I was running to. I just kept running. I didn't care where I was running to. I just wanted to run away from what I had just seen. I was broken. I was bitter. I didn't know when I finally ran back to school. I would rather stay in school than go home to such torments. I don't know how long my mom looked for me. I don't even know if she ever looked for me, but she came to pick me up after management called her. On our way home, she tried acting nice. I can't remember the excuses she made, but she somehow made me promise not to tell Dad about it when next we spoke. Although I promised to keep the secret, that night, I was broken. Until then, Mom had been like an angel in my eyes. Spotless, a sweet soul. How she could stoop so low to do such a thing was something I couldn't tell. I tried crying myself to sleep because the nightmare was happening with my eyes wide open. I prayed that it would just be a bad dream once I woke up. Very early the next morning, Mom actually started acting like nothing bizarre happened. She seemed like the mom I had known, but no matter how hard she tried, the wound was fresh, and it would take us a long time to heal. That ordeal was the first of many. Soon, she got tired of hiding her shaft deals from me that I got used to seeing various men at our place. Why Mom chose to live that kind of life, I could not tell. When I grew older, I understood why she tried her best to beat poverty. My mom was from a poor background. Her parents were extremely poor. It was so bad that they had nothing but hatred towards her when she was given birth. Her parents hated her for coming into the world. They cared less if she lived or died, and she was usually at the mercy of the good-hearted people of the community. She never knew what it meant to be loved. Although they shared the same house, everyone lived on their own. Her father lived for himself. Her mother lived for herself. Her sister lived for herself. Her half-brothers lived for themselves. Nobody cared for anybody. If anyone was sick, nobody cared. If anyone died, nobody cared. I learned that Mom once ran away from her home for 3 days, and nobody cared if she was alive or not. The hatred was too much in the family. It was really a dysfunctional family. The parents had resentments for the children, and the children reciprocated the same gesture. It was regular to find her father fighting with her half-brothers over money, or Mom was seen fighting her mom over something trivial matter. Her parents were often heard saying that their biggest regret in life was the failed abortion of all their kids. There was a time when my mom fought with her mother over a man. Her mother claimed that she was now going after her clients. Yes, Grandma slept with different men in the same bed she shared with Grandpa. The fight between Mom and Grandma was nothing new, but the comments made by Grandma fueled the hatred Mom had for her. Grandma told Mom that she would never amount to anything in life. Mom said to her that being nothing in life was better than ending up like her. However, she vowed to be better than her mom. The neighbors were constantly entertained by the family drama. Mom's family was everything terrible you could imagine. It was a jungle, and everyone lived like an animal. The school was not an option for the children because nobody was going to pay, so each child learned to fend for himself from an early stage. Mom was really smart. It seemed as though she was the smartest of all the children. She knew that sleeping with boys who were wallowing in poverty just like her would only turn out bad for her, so she decided to go for those who were better off than she was. She was going to go for the educated and wealthy. She soon started visiting bars and brothels where they were high and mighty patronized. Her game plan was to make a rich client develop emotional feelings towards her, and by so doing, she got him wrapped around her fingers. However, she soon discovered that nobody was willing to form a bond with a harlot, so she decided to take a different route. That was when she met my dad, Tony. Tony was from a wealthy family. He was from a good home. He had me raised with a high level of moral standard, and his parents had lots of expectations from him because he had been given a lot. He had a religious upbringing, and he was never allowed to do the kind of things other kids did. He didn't date girls, he didn't go for parties, he was just made to focus on his career, and he exceeded expectations. As a result of his parents' wealth and influence, he did very well. Tony was now a man, and due to his background, he hardly thought about marriage. He had zero thoughts about dating and getting married. He was into his work. This soon gave everyone around him, especially his parents, concern. They soon began advising him to get married. His company held a party to celebrate their achievements, and his colleagues persuaded him to lighten up and join them at a bar. It was while he was there that Mommy spotted her next big fish. She approached him while he was with his friends, and they happily excused themselves. Mom quickly knew that Tony was a newbie in places like that. He declined the glass of wine she offered him, and when he finally gave in to her request for a dance, Mom had to guide his steps on the dance floor. Soon after the party, Mom took him for an after-party, which led to her becoming pregnant. Dad was full of regret. What was he going to do? How would he tell his parents that he had gotten a girl pregnant outside wedlock? He was scared of aborting the child as he didn't want to put either mother or child in harm's way. His religion forbade abortions. He finally decided that it was best he just got married to her. He took her to his parents, and when they questioned her, she lied that her parents were dead and she had to fend for herself. The marriage took place before the pregnancy became obvious. After the childbirth, he learned he had made the worst mistake of his life. One which could ruin him. Mom resumed smoking immediately after I was born, and her thirst for alcohol couldn't be satisfied. She turned the home into a mess, and even though she would never lack since she was the wife of a millionaire, she was never really satisfied. She kept on going to parties, and while I was still months old. Dad couldn't understand why a mother would be this reckless. It was clear that she didn't know how to love. I guess that you can't give what you don't have. Dad finally decided to get a divorce from her when he caught her sleeping with one of his staff, and he discovered that her parents were still alive with 6 children. It was more than he could take. He cared less about the consequences. After her marriage to Dad, Mom traveled down to the community where her family was staying. Being a billionaire's wife, she went with her car and driver to spite her family. She needed to show her mother that she finally ended up very well. It was the talk of the town. She had changed her name from Rachel to Cindy. She spoke in an accent that was foreign to her community. She threw money in every direction except towards her family. The hatred was deep. Her family was not going to let her be. They traced her down to the city and made several claims about being her family, but she simply told her husband that they were just frustrated beggars who were out to take advantage of other people's success. Tony believed her. However, after so much pestering, Tony decided to give it some thought, and he paid an agent to investigate the issue. The findings were shocking. They were Mom's family. Dad traveled down to the community where they lived to see for himself. The people of the community gave him the history of his wife. Dad was shocked by the bones. Mom always had surprises for him, but now, he had had enough. He drove back to the city in anger, only to find one of his male staff sleeping with his wife. Now nothing would hold him back from getting a divorce. He told his parents, who were in full support of his actions, and the divorce proceedings commenced. Mom got a good fortune out of it, and she was awarded my custody. Something that Dad didn't want her to have. Dad was made to pay her a certain amount every month, which would include Carter for the needs of both mother and child, and he could see me twice every week. Mommy didn't seem to care. She had won either way. She would no longer have to dance around with poverty anymore, or so she thought. Within months, she had squandered the money gotten from the divorce, and we had to live on the monthly allowance. This allowance was never enough for Mom, and so she decided to play her game again and get another prey. This made us go from city to city. This made my claim to not have a father. It wasn't until I was 14 years old that my mother finally forced me to have sex. The men who usually visited the homes where we stayed would often make passing glances at me. They complimented my beauty and would whisper something into Mummy's ears, after which she would nod her head and say that I wasn't ready. When I turned 14, Mom made me follow a young man home. I guess he was twice my age. He was the son of one of her older male friends, and I later learned that the man wanted his son to get intimate with the lady because he heard him say that he was attracted to men. So, when this friend of Mom paid her a considerable amount, she called me and asked me to follow the boy home, and we should both enjoy ourselves. We got home, and I was amazed at the beauty of the house. I had only seen such places in the movies. The servants quickly arranged dinner for the both of us, and we ate in his room. It was clear that everything was new to him as they were to me because I could tell that he was more nervous than I was. We played a bit, and he kissed me. We soon found ourselves trying to make the night a success story for our parents, and we eventually did. When I was driven home the next day, I was really embarrassed by Mom took the opportunity to give me some lecture on sexuality. I watched her glow with pride as she said that I had been initiated into womanhood and that it was a phase every girl must pass through. She said it was a privilege to have had my first encounter with the rich man's son. I didn't even know his name, and I was sure that he didn't know mine. This was how I got introduced to life, and it didn't take long before I became a pro in the area of dating. My mom and I soon formed a partnership. She would have me put the best schools where the kids of the wealthy usually went. I was to identify them and get close to them. Through them, I would then give her access to their father. Mom had no issues making these men fall for her. She was beautiful. Far beautiful than myself. This was how Mom sustained the luxurious life she had so come to know. It was when we moved over to a new city and I was enrolled in a new school that I met Pete. Pete was a charming guy, but he was not really my type. He was naive in every sense of the word. I played the pity game and got the empathy of the class. Pete was moved by my story. He never knew that I was moved by his father's wealth. He was an excellent combination of intelligence and wealth. I soon had Pete solving problems for me, academic and financial difficulties. I had learned to be manipulative, just like Mom, so I had no issues making Pete think I was genuinely interested in him. Mom would always warn me not to lose focus or get attached to any guy because we were not going to stay at a place for long, so I had never had a serious relationship with anyone. I don't even remember a time in my life when I had feelings for a guy. I was just taking them for a ride. Pete soon invited me over to his house. He had wanted me to meet his dad. When I arrived, the dad was still busy and Pete and I just sat at the lounge talking. When he finally came to join us, I was overwhelmed by his presence. He had such charisma and confidence that every lady would want her man to possess. When I saw him, I almost doubted the fact that Pete was his son because he was way handsome. His light baritone voice carried with it such authority that made his servants loyal. When he came, Pete immediately introduced me to his father, Mr. Xavier. I was smitten. I watched his whole body as he talked. He was the complete package. He asked about me, and I talked about myself. I gave him the usual story that I had given everyone else about my dad being dead and my mother working hard to make ends meet. They all bought the story. Everything went perfectly that night. After dinner, Mr. Xavier asked that his driver drop me off. I wasn't pretty sure that I had impressed him that night because he seemed to pay little attention to me. However, I looked forward to coming over again, not seeing Pete, but seeing his dad. Mr. Xavier. However, although I was intrigued by him, I knew that the story concerning his escapades with ladies could be true because he never seemed interested in my mom when I spoke about her. Mr. Xavier was an oil magnate. He never remarried after the death of his first wife, who died during childbirth. He wasn't ready to settle down with any lady because he knew that they only came around because of his wealth. Losing the woman whom he had struggled with was really painful for him. His wife was everything to him. His success story would never have been written if not for her sacrifices. She was his motivation. She saw things in him which nobody ever saw. When he was starting up, things were not very smooth, but she stuck with him, and she gave him every support which he needed. He was really a mess, but she fixed him up. He was scared that she could leave him at any point in time because she had the opportunity to ditch him for more affluent guys, but she always reassured him of her undying commitment towards him. It was clear to Mr. Xavier that his lover was an angel sent to him from up above. He owed her his life. His life was now worth a lot simply because of the investment she made in him. He proposed to her as soon as he could afford a ring, and although she had no reason to say yes, she did. She was willing to risk her life for him. After they were wedded, she further intensified her efforts towards the growth of his company, and 5 years into the marriage, he was already a billionaire. That was when she became pregnant for Pete. Mr. Xavier was so happy when he got the news of her pregnancy. They were finally going to get an addition to their family. He made plans for them. He put things in place for the delivery. He actually got his wife a surprise house and a private jet just to say thank you. It was, however, a sad day for him when he was told that she didn't make it. He felt terrible. It was as though his world had just crumbled. He experienced a kind of pain that he had never known in all his life. He felt empty inside. His wife had just left a space that would be impossible to fill up by anyone else, and although he found consolation in the child which she left behind, he made a vow not to remarry. He knew that he would have a hard time finding a lady who wouldn't love him because of his money. A few months to his wife's demise, he began visiting clubhouses, and that was where he slept with a lady who claimed to be pregnant for him. He wasn't going to make the mistake of getting married to this harlot. That was a mistake a friend of his had made years back. He, however, took care of the lady who claimed to be carrying 2 children on the inside of her. He made sure she was comfortable and lacked nothing. He was willing to accept responsibility and take care of them all, but it was soon discovered that the lady had been lying all along. The pregnancy test was positive, and she did have twins, but they were not his. Although he didn't send her to jail for extortion, he quickly took back the car and house that he had given her. This further strengthened his resolve to be on the lookout for women. A week after I had met Pete's dad, I fell ill and missed school. This was our plan to get Pete to come to visit, and he did. When he arrived home, Mom quickly made him feel comfortable. She was good at that. Pete immediately fell in love with her personality. She was giving the love of a mother which he had never known or experienced. All through his stay, I was eagerly waiting to hear him say that his dad sent regards to me, but he didn't. While looking at him talk or laugh, I could only think about his dad. What was happening to me? Why was I falling for his dad? This was the first time in my life that I would really be interested in someone, and it just had to be my boyfriend's dad. Pete gets home feeling overwhelmed by the love shown by my mom. It told his dad all about her. She lit up a spark in him that his father had never seen since he was born. It wasn't surprising when Mr. Xavier invited Mom and me for dinner at his place. We knew that our plan was making progress. The day finally arrived when we were going to meet with Pete and his dad. I was eagerly looking forward to it because I wanted to see Mr. Xavier again. Mr. Xavier sent his driver to come and pick us up at about 7 p.m. We arrived at their home, and everything was well placed. We were led to the sitting while we patiently waited for our host to show up. I watched Mom feast her eyes on the eloquence of everything. Not even her billionaire ex-husband had such taste. I could read her thoughts from the look on her face. This was a big fish that would take a lifetime to consume. I knew that she was already playing a scene in her head where she would wake up in that house and boss the servants around. Before long, one of our hosts arrived. Pete. He was smiling and happy to have us around. I was sure he would have a nervous breakdown if he knew that he was expected but not wanted. I watched Mom put up a fake smile. It always baffled me how Mom could play different characters at once. How could she be good one time and bad the next? Mom was a wonder. While we were all seated and getting comfortable, I had the familiar voice that I was longing to hear. It was Mr. Xavier. His perfume filled the air. Our attention was immediately shifted from son to father. We all stood up to greet him, and he seemed impressed. He invited us to the dining table for dinner. Mom and I were blown away by the kind of service his staff rendered. Mom avoided every topic that would lead to her ex-husband, which we claimed was dead. She acted hurt by the painful memories of the past when Mr. Xavier asked about her husband. I don't know how she did it, but tears just flowed out. I almost believed that they were real. This woman never ceased to amaze me. Mr. Xavier felt bad that he had asked her about the past she was trying hard not to remember. He personally understood what it meant to lose someone you loved. He had had the same bitter experience. He apologized to Mom for making her uncomfortable, and Mom simply played the victim. We never wanted the night to come to an end, but it did. I was not particularly glad that Mr. Xavier and Mom spent most of the time together. That night was the beginning of another adventure for us. Mr. Xavier frequently began inviting us over to his place at weekends. He would sometimes persuade us to spend the night at his house. Mom had warned me not to get intimate so quickly with Pete so that I didn't appear like the cheap girl that I already am. She equally didn't give Mr. Xavier easy access. This made him all the more interested in her. She didn't seem like other women. She rejected his cash gifts and even turned down his offer to buy her a car. She didn't seem interested in his money at all. She always wanted things put in order, and I was amazed at her meaningful contributions to discussions centered on the oil and gas sector. I repeatedly asked myself how a lady who had never seen the four walls of a classroom had such knowledge. Her charm was finally catching up on Mr. Xavier, who saw more of his wife in her. The closer the holidays came, the closer Mom and Mr. Xavier became. I had no other option than to stick with Pete. I guess a bird at hand is worth more than 1,000 in the bush. When the holidays arrived, Mr. Xavier suggested that we go for a vacation somewhere in the Maldives. The Maldives is a living wonder. It was a sight to behold. We saw things we never knew existed. We visited places, went fishing, and partied. This was the kind of life that Mom desired, and we were living it. Everything was just perfect, even though I still wished Mom and I could trade places. I wished that she could settle with Pete while I would be left with his dad. It wasn't their first time coming there, though. Almost all the staff was well acquainted with Mr. Xavier and Pete. They looked at us as though there were others who had been in our position. Well, it didn't matter to either of us because we were occupying the position now, and we were not going to leave anytime soon. It was on our second day there, while Pete and I were taking a walk, that I discovered how deep he had fallen for me and how deep his dad had fallen for my mom. I listened with a grin on my face as he told me that he had never felt this way in his entire life. He confessed to me that this was the first time he was feeling complete. He said that this was the first time he actually knew the joy that came from a whole family. He then told me about his birthday that would be coming up in 2 weeks. It was going to be celebrated at home with most of his father's colleagues and friends present for the occasion. He said that all he desired for a birthday present was to move in with them permanently. I was glad that we had gotten this family, but I somehow felt bad because I knew that this chapter would soon come to go close, and they would be negatively affected once we left because they sincerely loved us. I then told him not to make decisions or wishes like that because his dad may not be in support of it. Although I knew that his dad wanted a relationship with my mom, I told Pete that his dad may just want to have both families as friends and nothing more. At that point, he told me what I never saw coming. Pete said that he has never been this way with any woman before. His dad always came alive when my mother was around. Pete said that he overheard Dad telling his friends that he had found a span just like his ex-wife and he was going to propose to her during my birthday celebration. This was it. We were almost there. I couldn't wait to tell Mom even though Pete told me not to. This was good news. When we got back home, I broke the news to Mom, and she was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a billionaire's wife once again. Life had finally given her a second chance, and she wasn't going to take it for granted. She wasn't going to let anyone, not even her family members, ruin this golden opportunity. She would never go back to her community to show off. Mr. Xavier told Mom about the birthday party and asked that we both be present. He had a popular designer design a dress for her, which was worth $10,000. Mom and I showed up that day. We actually came earlier than most guests. Mom pretended as though she never knew what was set to happen. She was an actress indeed. While my mom was going through the guest list, her reaction suddenly changed. She immediately had us sneak out of place. We picked a cab and drove home as fast as we could. Once we got home, she asked me to pack up my bags quickly because we were relocating. I was surprised. Why should we migrate to another city now that everything was beginning to fall in place? As we boarded a train, she told me that the third name on the list of guests was Mr. Tony. My father. I knew that this meant that I would never see or hear from my boyfriend, whose dad I fell in love with. Hey guys, what would you do if you were me?